Hello, 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 hello. I just want to highlight something really quick. Where's my... What? Haircut. Nobody was going out to the restaurants. Nobody was going out to get food. Nobody was doing those things. So those prices stayed the same, if not lowered. It's right in front of your eyes, dude. It's right there. It's right the fuck there. So, anyways, Crowder's a dumb fuck. Yeah. How much of my day did I just waste on that? I don't know.
In the Arkansas soil, and
How much of my day did I just waste on that? I don't know. 84th place. Gone. Russia's imports gone from the... Here it is.
Having struggles with
Beta, let's just say that he's not going to be back because, you know, I have no reason to believe he is before the end of the regular season.
in Philadelphia right now.
To make the money work because
this president breaking records is
historically has had
1 whole hour. Crowder's a propaganda.
Because I know my dude is ready to lay it all out and just hang out after the deadline passes.
well, I am on a alcohol-free kick through the trade deadline, so I'm Pierre LeBrun and I have both embraced this. It's not to say we're going to go partying, but we're going to go have a nice glass of wine after the show. So I don't think it'll be so much of a hangover factor Tuesday, but it might be an exhaustion factor. I might be doing that show from the couch, like laying sideways. We'll have it be like the psychiatrist couch, and I'll just like empty my brain about everything that happened in the last few days.
Tell me, CJ. Tell me all of your problems and everything you want to talk about as we go through the trade deadline.
a number was dropped for the
Gay. How do you like my...
Dude, I can't believe it. Crowder's a propaganda machine, bro. Labels his title. Title is... Who cares? Your kids are the experiment. Wait, what? This is not even the right video. Oh. Wait, what? This has a different title here. Oh, it's because it's posted. They changed the title. This is the title when he went live. Is Putin the new Trump? Blah, blah, blah. Bunch of other shit. So, like, here's his title. No timestamps on anything. 1 whole hour.
administer a sniff test. I've always said this, for example, if you look at sports, someone can maybe look like they're not on steroids and be on steroids, but if someone looks like they're on steroids, they're probably on steroids.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the eyeball test. Chael Sonnen, a friend of mine, talks about that. It's very rare that you think
Okay. Where do I even... Okay, here's some discourse, alright? I don't know, man. Doe did a tweet. It's been known to happen. Doe tweets. There you go. Very good. And there's no global unifier, no name to unite under. Even capitalism cannot unify us against capital.
Okay, I'm gonna skip his thoughts. I can't lie. Oh, okay, I don't care about anything.
Demonmama responds with respect. Make a few friends with a chemistry degree. Buy some lab equipment from one of thousands of lab equipment suppliers. Learn chemistry or pick up a medicine book from a local library. Talk to rural doctors and healers who are already doing this now out of necessity. So, right, of course. I'm sure you can understand where some of these critiques came from. Now I do, in the interest of being the partisan hack that I am, I do want to interpret this charitably. Okay.
Just because he's going to talk a lot, and I don't really have much to respond to. But I think the context is important to when Demonmama joins, because I don't really want to go into this.
So I have to wonder about some of the underlying motivations, because
she responds in chat multiple times. So anyway.
Put this exactly. Do you guys ever get the feeling there are a lot of anarchists on Twitter whose solution to social problems is simply to undo the good things that we've done through the specialization of labor? It's like when people are like, if everyone has a garden in their backyard where they grow tomatoes, we no longer have to waste social resources on tomatoes. And it's like, well, due to economy of scale, that would actually require far more time, effort, and land invested, like massively so. It would be less efficient in every axis. More people would have to spend more time doing more work to produce fewer things. For what benefit? So we get rid of a supply chain? Okay. You know, yeah, a lot of this stuff. I guess the vibe that I get in a lot of ways is that a lot of anarchists seem to legitimately believe that the only valid form of anarchism is anarcho-primitivism, which is where I guess I'll get to my tweet. Luca, who, as I understand it, is the spiritual reincarnation of Benito.
Why is a video buffering? What is happening? Am I an Am Prime?
Mussolini. According to Twitter, I don't really know.
Am I going back to the Stone Age as we speak? What is happening? Is YouTube just dead? Is this site gone? It's too much to handle? My bitrate's fine. I'm not downloading any on Steam.
Well, Demonmama, I'm not done. Hold on. Luca's actually really nice. I really like Luca. But now it's Luca. See? I think that's nice. But anyway, anti-bureaucracy leftists confuse me. It's virtually impossible to guarantee high levels of quality of life without a functionally efficient bureaucracy and related supply lines. It's everything we need to be produced locally, including the damage to the environment massively. So this is kind of... Oh, I'm not showing it. I'm sorry. I'm a moron. Sorry. Yeah, Luca. See? Wah. You see? Sorry. There you go. So this is kind of what I said, and I agree with it. Yeah, you know. People talk about...
What is fucking happening? Okay, fuck it. I don't...
Modern industry being inefficient, but like... Well,
it's on
while
for
there are some respects which it is, it's also important to remember that, like, the inefficiency is a product of an attempt to meet human need, right? To produce food, medicine, equipment for people. And getting rid of the supply chains requires one of two things. You either make the process massively less efficient or impossible, or you get rid of the process altogether, in which case human quality of life suffers for it. Now, I don't think human quality of life will always suffer for the reduction of some types of institutional and industrial production. Like, for example, have humans been made happier? Has human happiness risen because there are 4,000 types of cereal? Probably not. But there are things that have definitely improved human happiness. You know, like access to medicine, access to the equipment that allows us to engage with media on a global level. And those things can't really be maintained without a huge global bureaucracy, right? Like, how much work does it take to keep the internet afloat, guys, right? Like, we're talking, I mean, we need, first of all, we need global infrastructure to make it, like, globally accessible. And then you need, like, the servers, and, like, we're talking directly or indirectly millions of people worldwide to maintain this infrastructure. And it's facilitated an artistic and cultural and communicative renaissance, the likes of which humanity has never seen before. I like supply chains, you know? But anyway, so I respond, you know, wisely, brilliantly, as I always do when posting a GigaChad, picture. Why, yes, I am an anarchist who recognizes the fact that the moral necessity of destroying hierarchical systems and flattening power must be balanced with preserving industrial and logistical advancements which help the people efficiently meet their own needs. How could you tell? So, for me, this is one of those antagonisms. In fact, what I'm talking about right now is essentially a distillation of the antagonism that I was referring to in Doe's tweet right here. Freedom can't be born through managerial bureaucratic processes, but only through practicing freedom against those practices. I agree with that. In this case, you have two systems which both must exist, but must conflict with each other. That's the dynamic. That's the dialectic, if you will, where we need morally to destroy hierarchy, flatten power structures, but we also need to maintain and preserve elements of modern industrialization which allow for us to meet human need. So the only reason I'm talking about this is because some people, and by some people I mean like 3 people, but I wanted to give my thoughts here. Mostly the snooty anarchists that I know on Twitter disagreed with me in their typical snooty anarchist fashion. Social anarchism, so anarchism light, so not anarchism. Please stop calling yourself that. And by that, Dennis means an anarchist. Anarcho-statism, let's get it. I didn't mention a state. Where was the other person here? I'm really complaining about like 3 people. Please stop calling yourself that. Also, again, calling myself an anarchist. Why? Yes, I'm a walking oxymoron is much faster to say. And I think this betrays an incredibly limited understanding of anarchism. From the text that I've read, I don't think so. If your belief is that real anarchism involves the destruction of all supply chains, you are an anarcho-primitivist. Are we adopting the meme then that the only real anarchism is anarcho-primitivism? Has the meme become reality? You can abolish the state without abolishing supply chains. Anarcho-syndicalism addresses this. You don't have a nation state, the power and bureaucracy that allows you to maintain those supply chains or syndicates. I'm not an expert on it, but like legitimately, if you look at a lot of the discourse with these, like they seem to think that like pardon me, I'm not as much of a theory nerd as some of these people, but this statement right here, as far as I understand, is not antithetical to anarchism. It's not hypocritical. Do people in chat agree? Destroying the state and destroying the form of governance, like governance as a concept, those are different things. Governance can be the family. Governance can be anything. You can't destroy the concept of governance. Tribal societies have those. You can do what you can to reduce these systems and make them fair, equal, democratic, charitable, egalitarian, whatever. But there are things you have to preserve. I don't know. Well, right, Demonmama, we'll get to that. I mean, I do think you said some pretty dumb stuff. We'll argue for implication here, not what you explicitly said, but if you would denounce the interpretations that I arrive at, then that's fine. You're here in chat. You can just say that. But anyway, let me finish with this thread right here. So anyway, I say this, they say that, and then I continue to complain. And here are my complaints, okay? I woke up this morning very grumpy, remember? And I saw the people responding saying I'm not a real anarchist, so I said, why are so-called anarchists on the site making the same positive negative liberty mistake as right libertarians? Strong economic forces have the ability to free us from natural hierarchies and inequalities, like say the suffering of people with disabilities or illness. So to lean on this point specifically, right? People seem to be under the impression, a lot of anarchists at least, that there's no such thing as natural inequality, which there is. Some people are naturally healthier, less sick than others, more or less disabled, more or less sociable. If all of the systems of control and assistance are based on like tribal, familial, friendly relationships, then people with stigmatized conditions, people with autoimmune disorders, or who are prone to sickness, or just people who aren't that sociable to begin with, have a natural disadvantage in this world. One of the advantages of modern technology, which can only be maintained through bureaucracy and supply chains, trust me, there's no other way around that, not even close. It gives us the opportunity to free people from natural inequalities. In a world without the printing press, who would learn to read? Well, only those who have the ability to get their hands on books, which would be quite rare. Without, standardized education, how do you know that people in the communes all across the world have access to the same anatomical, medical, biological technology, the understanding, the knowledge? You don't. You can't anymore. Without, say, for example, medicine or, disability accommodations, how on earth could you allow for people who are born deaf or blind or sick to live lives that are equal or comparably equal? It's just not really doable. Even the most basic medications that we take today cannot be synthesized without a massive supply chain. Trust me. It's not Dr. Stone, the manga, right? You can't just, the channel Nile Red? Nile Blue as well, Nile Green. There are a couple of channels all under the same header, where he's like, I'm going to turn these plastic gloves into grape soda, and he has all these tools and chemicals and stuff. It takes a remarkable amount of knowledge and expertise to do all of that while using state-of-the-art lab equipment.
Also, I just want to mention here, there's a good point. Vaush bringing up a lot of good points, but it's funny. One of his points is that, if we have to live in these tribal societies off of goodwill of people, then people who, have disabilities, anyways, that statement he made is true. He's close. He has to apply that to the co-ops, because that's also a problem that co-ops can run into. That only an outside third-party representative body can really deal with, like a government regulating. The government would still need to have which I'm not sure if Vaush is against, right? I don't think he's being charitable here, but I don't think Vaush would just assume that protected classes would stay not racist in a society that he wants. Some other body needs to uphold those, like the government would still need to uphold those. So maybe he's fine with this, but a co-op wouldn't necessarily get rid of this. I'm not saying this is exactly Vaush's take, because I'm not 100% sure, but I know that some people do make this take, where they just think that co-ops would just solve racism, because who cares who's working for you? You guys all own the business or some dumb shit. It's well, no, people are racist. I don't know. People in co-ops might disfavorably vote to have all the black people work the shitty jobs because racism. I don't know, anyways.
A high degree of education, access to the internet to supplement his knowledge, and also access to pure chemical grade materials or lab grade chemicals that he can use to synthesize these materials. This is not doable without supply chains. But to move on. If you want medicine, education, advanced scientific attainment, and protection from localized cells of bigotry, that's another big one, you need bureaucracies and centers of power. If you don't, you're denying humans the tools we built to give people the chance to live egalitarian lives. Making the argument that freedom from bureaucracy and systems of control will inherently maximize freedom, no matter how inefficient and subject to natural inequality it makes us, is as dumb as a libertarian saying a lack of government regulation will inherently maximize freedom. And that is the vibe that I get in a lot of these cases. There are libertarians who are like, yeah, less government regulation means more freedom. And it's well, no, that's not true. But then there are anarchists who are like, yeah, the less hierarchy, there is more freedom. It's well, no.
Equality.
The hierarchies that allow us to produce and distribute vaccines make us more free. They free us from a natural inequality. That's not to say we shouldn't work to abolish the state, flat power, etc. But you weirdos act like the only valid anarchism is being and I gotta say, you're neither smart nor well read as you seem to think you are.
Well, no, it's important because I don't really give a shit about what he says. It's important for what Demonmama says, because she walks back every single fucking statement she makes. Does she tweet more?
Wake up, Grumpy. If your anarchism is, yeah, we don't need modern medicine or anarchism, I just think that, here we go. Please explain to me. Uses atoms to figure out molecules or something. Okay, we'll banish some people. Couldn't these people are saying this, or is this like a social prescription?
Oh.
Doing that? Okay, Demonmama. Okay, fine. These people are saying this is the only anarchism. As I understand it, anarchism isn't a system of governance. Anarchism is a political philosophy. That's why most anarchists are anarcho-communists, because communism describes a civic system, a political and economic system, and anarchism is just the philosophy by which you arrive at that point. So anarchism is being a political philosophy. It's not like you're a fake anarchist if you're like, okay, I think we still have to maintain supply chains. Like, Jesus, I guess all the people with diabetes just get to die in anarchist utopia. Like, I don't know. Like everything, it's all like Sparta, where they're throwing the deformed babies off the cliff. Well, that was just the Zack Snyder bit, but you know what I mean. I don't know. No, don't you fucking start, okay? All these people running around saying anarchism is this, anarchism is that. It's a look, guys, we got to maintain supply chains, okay? Look, consider it a necessary evil. We have to keep cool things in the world. There's so much shit we couldn't get otherwise. You have any idea how difficult it is to make penicillin? Actually, wait, isn't penicillin easy to make? That might be a bad example. Okay, do you know how difficult it is to make an Advil? I literally haven't seen one person doing that. Okay, Demonmama. Okay, fine. We want to be direct. I'll ask you directly, okay? I gotta wonder, what are we talking about here? So this person is saying managing large supply chains allows you to leverage comparative advantage to produce.
I can't read any of this shit.
Response to how would you produce medicine is this. Now I need to wonder, are you talking just about your polycule?
Fuck,
or is this like a
it's the
social
same
prescription?
other-
Because even if you're referring only to your own life and your own bubble, this is a very bad idea. And look, I make a lot doing this job. I don't make enough to buy the lab equipment necessary to synthesize even a fraction of the medication that most people, like, yeah, I mean, not to mention like, education takes years. But, I guess the thing that gets me the most here is talk to rural doctors and healers who are already doing this now out of necessity. It doesn't sound like you're talking about what you would do. It sounds like you're making a social prescription, and a pretty patronizing one at that, because rural doctors and healers would literally kill to get their hands on the kinds of medicine that I can afford at my local CVS, right? Like, it's not like, it's kind of like a noble savage thing. It's not like I would go out there and they'd be like, yeah, we do so well without antibiotics and painkillers and everything. It's, I think, like, what are you talking about, man? Okay, Demonmama, I feel like you're acting incredulous in chat at fairly reasonable interpretations of your statements. So I'm just asking, like, is this meant to be a prescription for social? Is this meant to be like a replacement for supply chains? I'm legitimately asking. I don't want to misinterpret you, but like, is this meant to be like, instead of supply chains to make medicine, we will do these things? There's an offhand comment 6 tweets deep about what I think could start to ease up the huge problems we have with supply line centralization. I never advocated against modern medicine, never advocated against technology, never advocated for primitivism. I simply said we should not smugly presume that the DIY production of certain needed drugs isn't possible, and that we should drastically reduce the walls between people and the info they need to make technology more accessible. Okay, so there are some respects in which I agree with that, but you're replying to a person. You're replying in a tweet chain talking about why supply chains are necessary. So like, the indication here, like what you're describing would function for an incredible minority of drugs, and I wouldn't even recommend you do that, right? Like these are different things. Like, I understand that a lot of this is in relation to like the DIY estrogen thing, but you guys know the DIY estrogen thing only works because you can just buy like the chemicals needed, right? Like, so people talk about like doing chemical stuff at home or whatever, but that's usually because you have pre-distilled chemical precursors that you can buy online and then synthesize yourself. Sometimes when all you really need is heat and mixing or a couple of basic things with tools you can get at home, but there are chemicals which can only really be synthesized with equipment which is unfathomably complicated, like that NMR spectroscope that I was referring to earlier, to make sure that you have a high level of chemical purity. And if you make a mistake on a lot of this stuff, you could just die. Vaush, isn't this the definition of an out-of-context snipe? Like my whole view should be judged by this one offhand comment now? Okay, Demonmama, you're acting silly here, all right? This is a conversation in which the explicit subject is preserving versus destroying supply chains. If your point here had been, we can supplement existing medical supply lines by encouraging people to educate themselves on some of this stuff, then that would be good, But in a lot of these replies, you don't really clarify that either. So all of your replies to this are either calling people bad faith for interpreting your statement in a way that you don't like, or saying like, haha, I made them mad, I looked through this, and I don't think any of these tweets say, like, I think we should preserve medical supply chains. He asked how we can produce medicine, but you can't produce medicine that way, Demon. And your tweets here presuppose supply chains, right? Because, like, lab equipment, I mean, that's a supply chain thing, right? I mean, you can't. I performed about cry to my threads deep offhand comments so desperate, I'll make it easier. Hypercentralized medicine is bad. Medical and chemical self-education is base. Safe informed DIY is base. Basic self-diagnosis space is very valuable thread. Are these things easy? Should they be treated carelessly? Absolutely not. But currently, medicine is locked behind an absurd machine of profit. Publicly funded research about non for self-teaching and school teaching is locked under copyright. In our country, millions of people have no problems with healthcare without crippling debt or outright denial. Okay, I do want to point out, though, that if you think there's gatekeeping behind, like, existing healthcare, the gate is only going to get higher if the bar to DIY healthcare is making friends with chemistry degrees and buying lab equipment from one of thousands of lab supplier equipment and learning chemistry and picking up a medicine. But like the gate, I think, is getting quite a bit larger and more fortified behind these rather than the current system, which is you need like a couple $100s usually for like basic health insurance per month. There are a few things where doing some DIY chemical stuff can be okay, but like it can be quite dangerous. Lab equipment is very expensive, yeah. Because my knowledge of sickness and treatments and how to manufacture those treatments are also locked behind costs, even ones are developed collaboratively. I don't understand what you mean by that. Well, Demonmama, what specific medicines are you looking to produce at home using lab equipment you've purchased and chemical precursors you've purchased? Because a lot of these, like, you can just die. Like, if there's not a sufficient level of chemical purity, you can get blood poisoning from, like, potentially quite a few of these. Now there are some medicines you can probably produce that you could reasonably safely do at home. But I imagine a lot of those are going to be ones where you could just buy for like $8 at the local pharmacy.
Or they're safe to make at home, but you're not gonna ever get the correct dosage. Because, like, to get the correct dosage, you need to maximize the purity or whatever.
I guess I just don't know where as many as possible to stay in capitalism. Okay, but as many as possible isn't really answering the question that I'm talking about, right? We should educate those who've been locked out, produce for ourselves what we can, things we can. Okay, but these are like talking points, right? But I mean like logistically, you know, like right now, like what can we, so like making a friend who understands chemistry, you know, okay, sure, but, and then like what medicines, like what is being made? Because a lot of this stuff can't be made without really expensive lab equipment, like hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. You have to store it, you need cold storage as well. You need, oh, the electricity bill, cool boy, because you got to maintain some very cold storage in some of these chemicals, obviously.
Oh yeah,
you need to maintain the purity, which can involve climate control. So I hope you have specialized facilities for these. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to deliver, and a lot of what you're trying to deliver, like with what is being gatekept that is easier to get through bypassing the supply chain. I think the centralization of medical production is generally a really good thing, because it's a what do you call it, economy of scale kind of deal, where you know the goal would be that you have a very strict level of quality control on resources that are highly centralized, which allows for a more uniform consumptive experience. You don't want variance in the quality of different agents. We have that right now, guys, and that's called drug lacing. You know, it's not as much of a problem now because weed is like legal in a bunch of places in the U.S. But you know, if you want an example of how bad chemicals can get when you have no idea who's making them or what regulatory standards they're being produced to, drug manufacturers, people like sometimes would die from chemicals that were laced with additives, or at the very least the quality would vary. And those are drugs meant for, you know, well, getting high. Imagine like drugs meant to cure you of your diseases, right? I'm hardly the only one looking at this. OpenInsulin.org, speaking especially of storage, many orgs like this want to make insulin that can be stored more easily. Well, we're talking about like organizational stuff like this, and it's not so much like DIY or like decentralized. We're just talking about like another centralization, right? Open Insulin Foundation, we're a team of biohackers with a variety of backgrounds and skills, relationships to insulin and diabetes in many cities, working to develop the first practical small-scale community-centered model for insulin production to make insulin accessible to all. Yeah, sure. But this isn't like DIY. This is insulin production from another lab, right? And this would be a lab, I assume, that would need to be a part of supply chains to get the resources. So I don't know how this is a contradiction to the arguments being made by the Bamsolino person. I think a lot of the issues here is that the contrast being made is against a conversation where Bamsolino is simply arguing for supply chains, but we need to maintain those, right? Even if you could somehow generate the lab equipment from thin air, the chemical precursors need to be distilled in very controlled environments. Their purity has to be assured or you could kill people. Is the argument just for antitrust? Well, I guess, I don't know. This is one of the issues where centralization seems to be, I think, a fairly good thing, right? Like, decentralization of a lot of industry can be fine when you're talking about stuff that can be reasonably and safely produced, no matter where it comes from. That isn't very exclusionary, but unfortunately, medicine production definitely is. But also, like, what you described, Demonmama, isn't what you're looking at here. Like, let's back an organization of people who will make insulin is not the same as making friends with a chemistry degree, learning it from a book, and talking to rural doctors and healers, right? Like, I feel like this is kind of a misdirection. Yes, it absolutely is. No, it's not. If the people who are building that insulin production plant are learning chemistry from a local library, then I would want them shut down. This is definitely different. This is a different thing. Vaush, no, I disagree. I think this is a process. This whole response just feels incredibly uncharitable what I'm talking about. Demonmama, I really don't think that I'm being uncharitable here. A politically motivated, well-educated DIY lab. If it's... by DIY, if you mean the insulin research thing, if they're making a full-on lab, then that's a professional outfit. It's going to be a business, right? Like a licensed non-profit or something. They're going to be subject to federal regulation. It's not really DIY. You're just creating a competitor, you know? A politically motivated, well-educated DIY lab. You and others have projected an incredible amount on my argument here. It's whatever, but it's time to try to address so many different claims that I make. Demonmama, it's really tiring as well for you to keep saying things other than the other things that you've said and get confused when other people make reasonable interpretations of your statements. So this tweet is definitely not the same as we're going to form a competitive org that will produce insulin, right? Like, those are different things. I don't even know how insulin is produced. I don't know what kind of like regulations.
Do I need
or
Marines
precursors
first
are
or
necessary. I imagine it's pretty significant
Mountain?
because it's so centralized. Talk about how they do it in Rojava. Make Rojava green again. Do you have a more specific link? What am I... This is just the website. Is there like a sub... Vaush, I am involved in open insulin. It's not deregulated and it's not free of hierarchies. It's a very organized and regulated effort. It's not bound by the for-profit pharmaceutical industry. Oh, sorry, it's not bound by the for-profit pharmaceutical industry. So it is bound by it then. Yeah, because it seems to me like it should be like opening a competitor, right? But that's like creating a startup competitor to an industry isn't the same as like talk to medicine men and make chemist friends, right? Like those are very different
Okay,
things.
anyways, basically, Demonmama and him are now like actually talking. So let's look.
You said it was though. I said it's a step in the right direction. No. Okay, well, so you say right direction. So that's what I'm trying to get at, right? Like, what direction is this? What does this mean? Open insulin makes it possible for people to be into democratized production. Well, the open insulin would only just allow for people to create federally regulated startups. Like, you're not going to be able to enter the supply chain with bad insulin, right? Like, it would still need to be subject to any of the considerations and regulations that the existing pharmaceutical industry are. If they're doing it non-profit, that's great, but... Oh, DM, you were willing to talk? I never saw a response from you. Oh, let me see. I typed the wrong typo. It's basically using non-profit sources of income to help break free from big pharma price gouging. Well, that's a good thing. That's a great thing. That should be encouraged. But Demonmama didn't tweet here, you know, we should support startup efforts to create you know, to create laboratories and foundations that produce medicine outside the exploitative for-profit pharmaceutical industry. Because I'd totally agree with that. That's good. But this sounds like it's like a, you know, like we can replace supply chains. We're all pro supply chain here, right? I'm pro supply chain. Call me up, Vaush, I'm here. All right, I'll ask you if you're pro supply chain directly. Would you still have any problems if Demonmama had never posted that tweet? Like, is your problem only with that one tweet? Well, it seems like a lot of the stuff that Demonmama followed it up with was kind of obfuscating, and it seemed like the context here, I don't know. I reaffirm the value of supply chains, okay? I'm an anarcho-natoist, United Nations as supply chainer, all right? I'm just repping my cause, okay?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Do you want me to put on video? What do you want me to do? Just
Oh
want me
no,
to be
no, we're just chilling. Yeah. I just want to know. Okay, so we're all
that would've
pro
been
supply
useful
chain
before.
here, right? We're all
I mean,
anarcho supply chain.
what do you mean by supply
that now.
chain? Like, this is one of the things that was really annoying me about this conversation is that, like, so first of all, the response to my initial like 6 whatever thread deep comment was like, some people were saying that I was denouncing supply chain. Some people were saying that I'm like anti-bureaucracy. Some people are saying I'm anti-organization, and some people, including yourself in this conversation a little bit, have gone and implied that I'm like against people working together as an organization, and I find that like very weird. When you say like, am I
don't think I
against
implied
supply
that.
chain? Like, I don't know. I don't think you can be against a supply chain. I think a supply chain is something that exists, that is a way that you source it. Like, I'm not against
2
anything.
years?
Like, I don't know how you can be
Oh.
against that. So that question doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, and I don't
What
really
was-
know like what is being asked when somebody says like, are you against the supply chain? I wasn't talking about like supply chains as a concept. The person in this like sort of random conversation we were having was saying like, oh, you can't produce medicine at all without basically capitalism, and I don't agree with that. I think that there are a lot of medicines that can be produced on a smaller scale that
They
isn't
didn't say
locked
that.
behind. I think that they did.
No, they
Like, that was my interpretation of it. And
They
like, I
said-
talked in DMs with this individual person, but like, I don't know.
they said, how
Like,
do you
if
manage
there's a
large
Sorry, go
supply chains without bureaucracy? And then they explained why supply chains can be helpful to manufacture
Mhm.
medication or generally leverage comparative advantage, blah blah.
Right.
And then this is literally how all specialization works. How would you produce medicine? They don't mention capitalism, and the positive example that you've provided so far, the Open Insulin Project, is one which would rely on the existence of supply chains and which has a bureaucratic structure. If you were to form any lab
Wait, hold
like
on a
that-
second. Okay, so, there's two different things between saying like advocating for the world that the Open Insulin Project is working in, and recognizing that they are working in a world in which these things currently exist. The Open Insulin Project is aiming to make it possible for more and more people to be able to produce insulin. That's not just I'm not talking about just bathtub insulin, though that's certainly a potential option depending on how easy it ends up being to produce the medicine. What they're doing is they're lowering the bar like massively. They're debureaucratizing. Yes, it's still a bureaucratic organization, but they are massively taking a step towards debureaucratizing it, making it possible for smaller firms and sometimes even like tiny firms to be able to produce medicine. That's like
through
they're
legal
doing
advocacy.
a step. Wait, but that doesn't have
No,
anything
that
to
was
do
a
with
question.
what I'm talking about.
Well, I'm
Wait, what's
asking,
that?
like, through legal advocacy to try to
Oh, yeah,
open up
that's
some
great.
of the regulatory standards.
So
to
actually,
allow them
for
to
the
be
first time, quick pause, for the first time I think ever, I have a fully supplied military before any war begins. That is interesting. I can actually upgrade my weapon too, but I don't think I'm going to. I have no factories to. I have no manpower. It's a problem. Got no manpower at all. None. Not a smidgen of manpower. I am running. I am. What's the community? Oh, suddenly 8 things. I'm trading? No way. Anyways, suddenly 8 of them. But 4. Just gonna get rubber from. Get rubber from ourselves soon enough. 6. Oh shit! Sorry.
More broadly.
Well, yeah,
Probably
people
over
are going to
here.
do different things. Some organizations are going to take are going to be waging war on the legal front, and other organizations are going to be saying, "Oh my God, our community, our remote community, is dying because they can't get insulin because we're not able to get coverage, and so
Actually, I
we
can
need to
wait till
find a
Germany
way to
declares
source
war.
our insulin that doesn't cost $300 per shot." Like those
Okay,
are
but
two
what does this
struggles
have to
that
do
are
with supply
connected, but they're not the same. Wait, what does this have to do with supply chains? Wait, okay, so that's the question. You're the people who are fixating on the supply chains. Like, I responded to this random dude in this conversation, and I've had DMs. By the way, hold on. Let me finish. So, and I've had DMs with this person like since, which is like, okay, cool. But yeah, my response was, no, wait a second. There are ways to start alleviating my response was to be, here's how we start alleviating the reliance on massive global supply chains, because as it turns out, there are a lot of drugs, and not just drugs, there are a lot of drugs and equipment, like whether it's from scalpels, whether it's to IV bags, all these different things. Many of these things can be produced without massive global supply chains, and those are controlled specifically. Wait a second. Wait, hold on. These things can be produced without these enormously locked down, highly centralized supply chains. Like, I mean, for example, we saw this happen with issues with masks, right? Like during COVID, one of the huge issues that we saw with masks was that, well, actually, masks aren't exactly like super hard to produce in large numbers, as long as you have the stuff prepared to do it. If you don't, or if it's an issue of copyright or all these other things, it can become incredibly difficult. So what I was saying here is like, wait a second, no, like, yes, people coming together, people with their friends who are specialized chemists, people with their allies who are specialized chemists, coming together to alleviate reliance on super monopolized, big pharma controlled supply chains is a good thing.
That's
yes,
not
this is a way that we can do that.
But they're still a part of the supply chain. You're not less participatory in a supply chain just because you're not participating in the monopolization of an element of it.
This is I never advocated against the existence of a supply chain. I'm talking about how we address the problem with hyper centralized, hyper bureaucratic, hyper gate supply chains.
The tweet that you were responding to was specifically defending supply chains. Wait, no, stop. You interrupted me a few times.
Go ahead.
The tweet thread was specifically about defending how supply chains are necessary in the production of medicine, and your response, implicitly because you're disagreeing with a person who is defending the necessity of supply chains, was this, which made it sound like we're talking bathtub insulin. That's what this sounds like. Now what you're talking about is fighting against the logistical and legal monopolization of some elements of the supply chain, but you're still a part of the supply chain. You're still sourcing your chemical
I'm going to be
precursors.
a little bit of a cunt here for a second. But this really feels like what you've done is you're like
what you've done here,
fixating on my comments with another person, and are attempting to basically project forward the worldview, the greater worldview on this topic, without actually letting me leave this tweet. So it's a very interesting and unfavorable position that I think uncharitable position that I find myself in, expecting to simultaneously answer questions based off of this tweet that were not brought up or addressed in the original in this original tweet, while simultaneously not being able to like say, hey, wait a second, like I have bigger views than this specific tweet response. And if you want me to address this specific tweet response,
we're both fully
wait,
pro supply chain then, right? Like
I literally, you asked me when I walked in here, you literally asked me, you walked into this conversation and asked me, are you against supply chains? And I told you that question doesn't make any sense to me, because supply chains are a thing that exists no matter what you're doing. You
What?
can't just teleport ingredients to yourself. Like, I don't know where this like, again, it's this totally unhinged thing that people have projected onto me. This idea that I think that there's like, everybody should have like an atomic synthesizer in their house. I've never said that. I've never been against supply chains. I don't know where that came from. My response here was
What do you
because
disagree with from this
excuse me, hold on,
Twitter
wait,
user
wait.
then?
This Twitter wait, so like I didn't know that this was like the that my crime of like offending or not
Demonmama.
perfectly arguing with
No, I'm
Wait, no,
just
wait,
no,
I'm just-
Demonmama.
you didn't even let me finish what I'm saying.
Hold-
Like
hold-
I
hold on,
understand I go for a while,
because I feel
but
like you keep
hold-
running.
but-
I just
but hold
want to
on,
know
but-
broadly. Do you disagree with anything this person said then? Because if you don't, then it seems like very random to in a tweet thread of a person you don't disagree with who's defending supply chains to then respond with something that sounds really weird and doesn't really address the supply chain question, but then to go on to defend supply
Here's
chains.
the main.
But
Look at this.
like sort of tangentially.
5% recruit.
Do you disagree with anything that they've said? That's all I want to know.
No.
yes,
Problem.
I was pretty clear with what I disagreed with them. I said I don't think
Do I have
that
a silo
their,
somewhere? Did that?
characterization of large hyper bureaucratic centralized supply chains.
didn't
Now
put a silo
I
in there.
recognize maybe other people engaging in this conversation that you
putting one
weren't a
silo
part
somewhere
of, that
is
none of
just
you were a part of, because this is. Hold on a second.
Actually, totally useless.
Let me finish what I was saying, because like I don't know, like okay, if your goal is to try and like force a framework onto me here and like be like you were being bad to this Twitter user, okay, yeah, maybe I misinterpreted.
Can we just engage?
Wait,
So they didn't
Vaush,
talk about
you just asked me a question. You didn't even let me finish it. Wait,
No,
wait.
I asked you
Vaush.
if you agreed
Oh
with
my
them.
god. Okay,
And
so
now
this
you're
is Twitter court then.
no
This is what this is.
Demonmama. I asked you if
Demonmama.
you
No,
agreed with them,
like,
and
are
you
you
answered
interested-
that, and then you continued with a sort of
No, wait.
projection of my mental state onto this, like whether
I
or
did
not I'm
not
just
do
accusing
that.
you of being mean to people
you
on
just
Twitter.
asked me whether I disagree with their position, and I
What do you
tried to
disagree
explain,
with?
and you interrupted me.
I'm
Yes,
gonna need
I
15.
disagree with their idea that large supply
set,
chains
an
or
amount?
bureaucratic supply chains are a 100 or highly bureaucratic supply chains are a necessity. I don't agree with that. I don't think that that's
They
true.
just said
I don't think-
bureaucratic.
Okay, but that's your reading of this conversation that I was having. When
That's
I
the
was,
read that you
excuse me,
get if you put it through
excuse
text
me.
to speech.
They said, what does this mean? How do you maintain large supply chains without bureaucracy? When I read that, I understood that to mean they think that bureaucracy, that like extensive bureaucracy. By the way, my understanding of bureaucracy is I think people use that word to mean a lot of different things. And when I engage with bureaucracy, my understanding is like the definition of bureaucracy, which is, a government, a form of extremely complicated government that's run by unelected officials. I don't know. Maybe this person meant something different, but that's not what I interpreted as. So when I read this thread and I interpreted this, I'm like, this person thinks that there's no way to alleviate.
Oh no, I gotta choose between recruit
medicinal
population.
problems without,
I gotta
like,
choose
relying
between
on
manpower and
basically
national steel
capitalist,
card. No, I don't. I'm gonna get
existing
5%
supply
recruitable.
chains. Now, I recognize
Bullshit
that
arena
that is my
soon.
interpretation of the tweet because it's Twitter. But again, I did not expect to be put on like 600 quote retweet trial for my response to this dude in a comment. And
Can you please
To-
stop?
to-
Can you please stop with the victim thing? We both get attacked all
am
the
I-
time. Wait, we
Wait,
both
I'm
get
sorry.
attacked. Demonmama, we both get attacked all the time. You
and
like
you
full-
whine about it just as much as I do. Don't
Not
try
when
to
I-
play like
no,
I'm a victim. You were just
come
doing it
on.
earlier this
We're with
thread.
fri-
Come
We're
on,
with
man.
friends here. Like, why are you keep doing
Wait
this?
a second.
Wait,
We're
DM.
with fri-
Wait, DM.
Oh my
Why do you keep doing this? Like, and I got attacked for this tweet this far down.
I didn't.
All I've been doing is asking you what you believe and trying to contrast it against contents that I see in the thread. I've been very neutral and level-handed in how I approach this. I would
Okay.
appreciate it if you stopped projecting antagonism onto my behavior.
I don't think that I've projected antagonism onto your behavior, but I apologize if that's the interpretation, and I recognize that my frustration with certain aspects of this conversation are more generalized. Some of us, listen, I'll leave that one out.
So-
I would want to be mean.
By
Look,
bureaucracy, I think they just mean an administrative structure. like the bureaucracy that you'd get in a basic, like any kind of company formation. You have leaders who delegate responsibilities and tasks. You have to maintain the supply chain by having people who work transportation, production, distribution, quality assurance, regulation, like that kind of thing. I don't think they meant
Okay,
like you
that's-
need like a hyper-monopolized capitalist industry to
That's
manage it.
totally fine, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine if that's the way you interpret it. That's not the way I interpret it when I responded that way. And when I hear the word bureaucracy, I don't. That's not what I use. That's not the word I would ever use to describe like internal organization of an organization. Like I don't use the word bureaucracy interchangeably with having an internal structure. Obviously, I think it's an absurd statement to like try and say that I don't believe in organizing things. That's ridiculous, which by the way has been mentioned in this conversation. But like that's not what was being discussed here. And then again, the second part of this, which what I was trying to say just a couple minutes ago when the victim thing happened, apparently, was to say that like, okay, so if we can acknowledge that like there is a disagreement on what this person was saying and what I was responding to, then why don't we defer to my actual opinion on this? And then I gave you the thread, and I also told you my opinion when I came in, and now I'm on your show, but we're still stuck on this one tweet to somebody else.
Oof.
And the reason why I keep
Oof,
bringing
it's
up
Italy's
that
got
it's a
nothing on me.
comment
Oof.
that's 6 threads deep is not because I'm trying to play
If we
the
can take
victim
Tobruk, we're good.
or
If we don't,
complain
we
about getting
run.
a million people dogpiling me over a completely like what I consider to be not that spicy of a response to somebody.
Any manpower,
But
nothing in this guy.
because I'm pointing out the fact that this entire conversation happened like 6 comments deep, and then no one will let me talk further about this incredibly large topic, despite asking me a million projected questions based on their own interpretation of what they think my views are.
And
I even made a thread about it, and nobody fucking looks at it.
Well, right, we see what we see. Now, I'm totally okay with you clarifying and explaining. That's why I'm mostly asking you questions. The issue is, if you have a problem with people looking at this and asking you questions about this tweet, like, it seems to me like you want to run away from it. But I want to ask you, like, I want to explore. I want to know what you meant by it. But if you're angry at me for wanting to know while giving you room to add additional explanations, then it seems like your issue isn't that you're not being given room to fully explain. Your issue is that you're being asked to explain it all. You know what I mean?
No, I just sure, I can understand that some people might
Hey,
have that interpretation,
run,
but I think that's an
assholes.
uncharitable interpretation. I've been pretty willing to answer. Actually, I've been extremely willing to answer questions on this,
Okay, so I just
including yours. I've answered every one.
Right, okay, so we're not anti-supply chain. We understand that
No.
bureaucracies, in the sense to which I refer, so like an administrative structure, are necessary for
Sure.
producing the lab equipment, the
Course.
precursors. Right, okay.
Yep.
So, So, with all that being said then, what medical work are you interested in doing through the procedures recognized in this tweet?
The immediate production of necessary medication to rural areas and areas that are underserved, and I think that can be done. A great example of this is immediately HRT. HRT is a drug that can be sourced.
What supplies
Not
am I-
entirely. Obviously, we live in a
manpower.
capitalist world, so there's going to have to be some sourcing that interprets. I'm not saying that you can be entirely independent, but what you can do is you can produce and give access to people who literally would not have any other option by doing things
Canadian
like
Defensive
this,
LLMA,
by talking
no
to
one
rural
will
doctors who
pass.
are already having
They
to
do
deal
need
with this,
planes,
who are
though.
already
My
have
cast.
been cut out of the
Got a lot of
capitalist
casts,
supply
as you know.
line and have to find alternative ways
No
to source
manpower.
and or create medicine, to learn chemistry, to become inspired and say,
Wait,
hey,
hold on. A couple of things there were... Okay, rural doctors
I don't even know what I'm
don't
getting.
make
Oh no, I'm
bathtub
just naturally getting
estrogen
it.
because they've been cut out of the global supply chain. I don't know what you mean
some
by
of them
rural.
do.
So the
Some
reason
of
why
them
I'm
do,
researching
yes.
that, by the way,
Some of them
is
actually do that.
because fuel gain
And
per
in fact,
oil
Wait,
in
what do we
some-
mean
in
by
some
doctor?
particularly bad areas?
and
What's
fuel
that?
gain from
What do we mean by doctor?
I'm talking about doctor. I'm talking about licensed doctors that literally that there are. Wait, I mean, like I don't know. Like I just feel like it's. How do I tell you that there are parts of the world in which people literally don't have access to medication or they
Okay,
can't
wait,
afford the
by
medication instead to make
rural-
themselves.
By rural, do we mean like
Rural.
in the U.S. or do we mean like Rojava? Because I assume
Both?
we meant. Okay,
Both?
in the United States, maybe this has happened once or twice, but I would be very surprised if rural doctors are being cut out of, because the American supply chain, the medical supply chain, is pretty holistically reachable in the borders of the United States.
If
I don't
you have
think
money.
Well, if they're doctors, their practice would make money from the prescribe. Well, first of all, you wouldn't go to a doctor for estrogen, right? Like the doctor would provide the eval, but you would get it like through a pharmacy. Pharmacies are licensed. I'm sure there's variants here, but like
I don't know. I feel like this is, again, we are kind of talking about, we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'm okay with talking about is no, I'm talking about this particular what I'm saying is that we're now getting into the nitty-gritty of whether or not there are areas of the United States in which it is incredibly difficult to source easily produced medicines, and I would argue that it is. I would recommend looking into the issues with attaining certain types of medication, specifically insulin, HRT, painkillers, that are in like rural reservations, in which even if you have a medical practice, that doesn't mean that you can sustain the access. That doesn't mean that you can sustain supplying your patients if they can't afford it.
Okay, so a couple of things here. I don't know why you would need to. I don't know what kind of painkillers, like opiates. Like you can buy these for pretty cheap.
That's not the only type of painkiller.
Huh?
That's not the only type of painkiller.
Well, I mean, if we're talking like opiates or like Tylenol or ibuprofen or something, like you can either get these on the street or at a pharmacy. I guess the issue that I have with this is that like what you're talking about right now are like people at the margins in the most extreme underserved conditions, desperately trying to work to overcome. But like this is very much a marginal case. In the vast majority of cases here, the means by which one could do this are infinitely more difficult to overcome than just using the medical system right now with all of its gatekeeping as it's currently available. I know bathtub estrogen is like a common like thing, and you know there are exceptions, sure. I don't know much about the DIY stuff, but great. But in terms of real medicine, I mean, estrogen isn't medicine in like the the same sense as like something that's meant to help you with.
I think it is.
Not with the same sense that something like meant to help you with a disease or an illness. That's fundamentally a different thing. And like you can kill people by misproducing these.
I agree. I've never said anything about that. Like I don't know where the disconnect is here. That's the thing that's frustrating me. Is like I don't know where the like I don't know what word I'm supposed to use here, but like the response to what I'm saying, which is that I don't advocate that like if you're struggling to get your medication, that like you becoming a chemist is going to fix your problem. But what I do think is that lots of people becoming passionate about chemistry make lots of people becoming access about distributing information that is currently locked behind people becoming passionate about how to make cheaper, more durable, more accessible scientific equipment or medical equipment. That all of these things, if people take the time to pursue these things, study them, research them, get motivated about them, that they can begin to change the not just the culture, but change the function of the world. If you have people who feel disempowered, who want to alleviate problems, like what you said, which is that, okay, I want to touch on one of the things that you just said, which is this idea that oh well, it's just easier to go through the standard system of medicine. Well, that's always true. It's always easier to do what you're being told by the people who are telling you to do it. And sometimes that does mean, like, yes, it is easier to find a way to go get a job at McDonald's and pay $300.
Those sheepish diabetic people. What do you mean?
Wait, what?
The ease of access to medical resources is obviously something we should prioritize.
Yeah, we're not in disagreement about that.
Well, then why are you comparing it to like you're saying what they want you to do? Like everyone, like you're not like falling for the system if you get medicine from within.
I'm sorry,
the
was
traditional...
that the takeaway?
Well, you said do what they want you to do, and then you compared it to getting a job at McDonald's, and that did seem like kind
hold
of
on.
a loaded
Like,
comparison.
I mean, did you want to let me finish that sentence? Because like I literally didn't even get to finish the thought. Like, I
Okay.
feel like you might be jumping the gun a little bit. Okay.
What?
Because like what I was saying here is that yes, it is when there is a system in place, playing by the rules of that system is always going to be the case. And sometimes, and I'm not saying that you're a bad person for ever doing that. I fucking get my medicine at a pharmacy, of course. But what I can recognize is that, hey, hold on a second. A system that allows for insulin, for example, to be locked behind a $300 price tag is not a sustainable system, and that puts people who need insulin, people who need HRT, can apply any medicine here, in a disadvantaged position. So how do we alleviate that in a system that is this this locked down, when there are people who do find themselves in the position of being denied this stuff, who when they come to the end, they don't have an alternative? And the answer is, in my opinion, or I wouldn't say the answer, I would say one of many answers, is to pursue the massive ungatekeeping of the production of and research of and understanding of diseases, medicine, medical technology. That is, I think, a huge part of it.
That's a different thing, though, because what you're talking about, making this medicine easier to access, less legally gate-kept, easier to produce, cheaper to produce, this is stuff that's going to be done by multi-billion-dollar industries, court battles fought by high-paid lawyers, and teams of experts who combined have enough education to build black holes. This isn't going to be done by...
I don't think so.
Wait, it absolutely is.
I don't think so. I think
wait, hold on. After all the fuss about interrupting, these advancements, especially stuff like cheaper production of insulin, I mean, historically, in almost all commodity productions, the way you make cheaper the production of something is by streamlining the economy of scale which allows for its production. Sometimes you have chemical breakthroughs that allow for that, but generally those breakthroughs are going to be done by people who have the biggest and most well-funded teams, and that's almost always going to be people already in the pharmaceutical industry.
What?
So if you want to make the process more efficient, you're not going to do... It seems to me like there are two different things here, and they're unrelated. And one of them is we need to reduce gatekeeping, reduce centralization, we need to make this more accessible, more cheap. And the other one is having friends with chemistry degrees and learning to make this stuff yourself. And that's the part of this tweet that I disagree with, because it seems like all the stuff you're adding onto the tweet, I agree with. Yes, we should make this more accessible. We should make this more cheap. We should make this easier to produce. We should destroy the systems of gatekeeping that keep people from getting access to this. But we should not be encouraging like DIY painkiller meth labs where people with no regulation or oversight
right there you just said it.
Fix systemic problems.
You just said it right there. Do you see what you just projected onto my actual tweet?
I feel
like that right there, what you did right there, saying that like I'm advocating for like meth labs and shit is what I was trying to say at all. I feel like that's ridiculous. I feel like that's the sort of core of the uncharitability I'm dealing with.
Where in this tweet am I supposed to assume government regulation and standard and production control is involved?
Nowhere. You're just talking about something else now.
Wait, so if there is no quality standard for what you're producing, then I will compare it to a meth lab. Because the only difference between it and a meth lab is you're making something other than
who's talking about quality standards? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
this is
hopefully
the
people who need the medicine.
Yes, obviously. Wait, where did I say anything that you should just not care about the quality of the medicine?
Demonmama,
that you should
it's
not
not
have
about
any
not caring. It's that they don't have the what you're advocating for doesn't entail the regulations which would allow for good quality.
I recognize that it doesn't entail the regulation. But regulation isn't the only thing that protects the clarity or the purity of a medication.
Is this a joke? Are we to go back to 1900s America? Are we to go back to the rat shit dropped in the... No, wait, Demonmama, stop.
Unironically...
Stop with the indignance, Demonmama.
I like the fucking the slow decline of the conversation. Demonmama comes out like blazing at the very beginning, and Vaush is like super laid back and quiet, like, okay, maybe she'll calm down. She just never lets off, dude. Never lets off. Oh, fuck, it's and Prims, am I right?
You're not as fragile as you're pretending to be here. Are
I'm not
there
being-
or are
okay,
there
you're just
not
being a fucking cunt.
federal
Like,
regulations on the
been
production
unbelievably
of this
nice
medicine
the whole
that
time.
you're advocating for here with your chemistry knowing
of
friends?
Of course.
How are federal regulators regulating the production of an unlicensed lab with people who have learned chemistry from medicine books and lab equipment they bought online?
Huh? But they don't have to.
Huh?
Wait,
What?
That's
you,
not
you
the
just
only.
said that there's
What?
federal
wait.
regulation.
That's
What?
not the only.
Huh?
Wait. Okay.
What?
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm unironically confused as to what you're asking me here. I'm just.
Huh?
I'm genuinely getting confused. I'm not trying to
What?
be like. I don't know. Maybe you think I'm trying to be performative or whatever. I just don't know what you're asking me.
Is there
Are you
federal
asking me?
regulation on the medicine they're producing? Are they being regulated?
No.
Is there an FDA?
No, definitively not.
Then,
Definitively not. If you're doing it yourself, then no.
Then
But that
I
doesn't
don't
mean that
think-
there's no quality control. That doesn't mean that there aren't systems of quality control
what
that
quality
can be put in. Wait, what quality control? Okay, hold on. There's numbers of ways that you can do this.
my comment was
In
good.
fact, we already see this. One of the best examples is in is even in the cannabis industry. Even before federal regulation, long before federal regulation came in to overlook cannabis, these labs would publish the lab results. They take a test of their own stuff, they publish their lab results, and then
labs?
people could.
Fuck
People
it.
bought from cartel distributed weed that was often laced or low quality.
That's not the only place that people.
Yeah, but that was
No,
where a
no,
lot of them
again,
got
I
it
just,
from.
This is exhausting, Vaush, because I feel like no
Demonmama.
matter
Exhausting.
wait, stop, please.
Stop.
No matter what I say here, you have a very specific. It feels like you have a
look at that.
specific angle on this, and that no matter what I answer, you just immediately pivot to something else,
So,
and that is frustrating.
Are
for me,
you
because I'm trying to answer what
seriously
you're at.
advocating that the free market will self-regulate to produce high-quality products without federal regulation?
No. And no, not even close. And the fact that you've come to that just shows to me that, like, I feel
Stop
there's no
with
attempt
the
to engage.
addendums. When I ask a question that is yes or no,
I can
just
addendum
want
whatever the fuck
answer.
I want.
But it
I don't.
do- it
You don't like. You don't
detracts.
impose. Wait, it doesn't detract anything. You ask me a
detracts.
question and I speak. If you want to have if you want it to be like an inquisition and you want me to just answer with single yes no.
But you're just
one word.
whining.
I'm not whining.
You
Okay,
are.
fine.
Wait,
All right,
chat.
All right. Vaush,
DM.
Okay. This is.
Are you
this has
not
been-
advocating for the free market to
No, I'm not
self-regulate?
advocating for the free market. I'm advocating for people to specifically take an effort to be the ones who say, okay, there is a need that needs to be met here. How do I learn what is necessary to do this?
How is that
do
different
we-
from the free market self-regulating?
Oh my God, I don't know. If you don't see how that's different from the free market self-regulating, then I just don't think that. Like, I don't know how you can
Wait,
look
how
at
is
that
it
and say,
not? Enterprising businessmen in the 20th century would create, snake oil without any federal regulation, and they would do it. Sometimes they didn't think it was snake oil, by the way. Sometimes they thought, oh, really, this foot juice will cure people's,
That's very
gallbladder.
nice. I don't know how
Demon-
this doesn't.
Demonmama,
It's not what I'm talking
I
about.
am
at all.
asking you directly how you could ever expect unregulated chemical laboratories to produce things with better standards of quality than the free market will regulate itself. This is the same. You have an
That is
unregulated
nothing-
industry.
None of what you're saying here is anything that I was talking about there. I never advocated I literally never advocated that like even people going and researching this stuff and learning how to do it on their own and being equipped in that way, that it would have better results than better results in the actual like the medicine itself than the massive global hyper pharmaceutical industry.
Would have
but that's
worse
not the only-
results. The
I mean,
pharmaceutical
it could. Yes, it could.
No, it
Do you
objectively
think-
would. The
wait, do you-
pharmaceutical industry has regulations that keep that medicine clean.
Sure. Yes. Fine. Like, I don't know. Again, that part is fine. But I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out what the core question is.
It just seems like you're doing the anarchist. It's funny because earlier I said that a lot of anarchists would sound like libertarians, and you're doing the, oh well, there won't be any federal regulation on
yes.
this medicine that could easily kill a person.
I have
but
supply.
we'll have quality control because the
Look at the
people who are
power!
make it of high quality.
The power!
Then by what system
Dude,
could you
instant.
make
Get
sure
supply,
that
win,
these
win game.
unlicensed laboratories which are producing medicines through DIY methods are of high quality? Because right now the system to ensure the quality of traditionally produced pharmaceuticals is massive and incredibly extensive. The FDA, the FDA does an incredibly stringent job overlooking the production of these because the consequences of mistakes which they have made could be catastrophic. You need experts and millions of dollars of equipment. They have those nuclear testing machines to make sure that the molecules are lined up right. And all this is done.
Okay, but what is that? What are you getting at with that? Like,
Fewer
I recognize
accidental deaths.
Okay. Oh my God. Like, I don't know how to. Like, I feel like.
Why would
there's,
you
like,
ask
such
me?
a
What does
line-
regulation of the pharmaceutical industry get us? What do you mean?
What? Who said that?
You just, DM, you just asked that directly. Are you trying to gaslight me? You just asked
what
that
did I-
explicitly.
I'm sorry. Did I?
Asked
what
that.
did
Asked that.
Okay. Oh my God. Like, I don't know how to. Like, I feel like.
Why would
there's,
you
like,
ask
such
me?
a
What does
line-
regulation of the pharmaceutical industry get? Yeah, the FDA does an incredibly stringent job overlooking the production of these because the consequences of mistakes which they have made could be catastrophic. You need experts and millions of dollars of equipment. They have those nuclear testing machines to make sure that the molecules are lined up right. And all this is done.
Okay, but what is that? What are you getting at with that? Like, I
Fewer
recognize
accidental deaths.
Okay. Oh my God. Like, I don't know how to.
Okay, so she did say it.
I don't know how
Just
to.
making sure.
I don't know how to, like. I
She
feel
did
like
explicitly
there's,
say,
like,
what does that get
What
you?
does regulation of the pharmaceutical industry get us? What do you mean?
Who said that?
What? Who said that?
Just, DM, you just asked that directly. Are you trying to gaslight me? You just asked
what
that
did I-
explicitly.
I'm sorry. Did I?
What?
Don't know what. I'm sorry.
What?
Unironically, I don't know what you're talking about right here. Did I
What?
misspeak
Are you
or something?
high? No.
I'm not high. I'm literally not high. Like, what are you talking
What?
about? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're
What?
asking me. You said I did. I said that. What does the
Fox say?
FDA get us? I
What-
never said
what?
that. Or at least if I did, I didn't mean to.
You.
What?
Okay.
Oh, anymore.
What I'm
So-
saying is, what are we talking? What are you getting at? I think literally what I said is, what are you getting at with this? I didn't say what does it get us. I think the FDA does some very good things. I think it does some very good things. Like, obviously, like, I think that the FDA is an example of a bunch of interlinking organizations that can check one another. But that's not the only thing I'm talking about in this, nor was it the only thing I've ever been talking about, nor was it even what I was directly addressing in the tweet that everybody is so frustrated about.
Then in these
But, I mean, I don't know,
DIY
like, I just feel like
labs,
at this
don't
point-
you
at
think
this
the
point-
lack of quality control could lead to a lot of people getting hurt?
Of course, absolutely, of course. I don't think that this is like. I don't think that
What?
like, in an ideal world we would have I think if we could have like a perfect fantasy world that you could sort of summon up right now, it would be awesome if there was a benevolent AI that could scan everything
Benelli?
that's produced by humans to make sure that it's good for them. But that doesn't exist. And what we have right now is we have a lot of people who have no access to any medication, who have no knowledge about medication, who don't know anything about chemistry, who can't get access
watch
to
this.
education about chemistry. And I think that people coming together,
First of all,
teaching each other this shit,
everyone
and
can
learning
get
how to do it
access.
is no,
all
I
the-
don't think they can.
The processes
that's a
for
fantasy.
anything,
Was it
the
United Kingdom
processes for
fighting
anything any
There's
person would be
no way.
capable of doing with lab equipment they could buy online is definitely available.
Can they actually
online,
secure all of
at
Europe
least for,
for
a lot of the
once?
stuff that
I
they
don't
need.
think I've
I
seen
don't
the
know
AI
what
do that,
proprietary
like,
medications we're talking
recently.
about here. If you
Sure.
mean like highly complex, like very specific stuff, but like, the issue is like I think this attempted solution is more destructive than the real, because if your solution was like we need to aggressively advocate for political solutions to the medical gatekeeping, I'm on board with that.
That
Well,
makes
hold on a
things
second.
interesting.
I think we've gotten at the core of this. You think that what I was saying is that every single person in the world should just become a chemist, but I never said that at all.
I think what you're saying
Ever.
is that we should abandon the system that allows for federal regulation of drug production and have underserved communities get the equivalent of like bathtub medications that will kill a third
No.
of them, and that this is somehow preferable
Well,
to them
I don't know.
striving
I guess you know, I'll join you for a minute in your fucking ableism arc, because this is fucking schizo posting. All that I said in response to that, first of all, is this particular comment that you're reading off here was a response to somebody else's conversation, and when I clarified what I mean in full in an actual thread and here, that has been constantly ignored. I've said it here like 4 times what I actually believe.
With what you've said. I asked you over and over, like, how would, and you still haven't answered, how is believing that these labs will self-regulate any different from
I don't believe they're going to self-regulate.
Then how do they maintain quality control?
I think that the only way that these groups maintain quality control is by checking one another and being checked by other organizations that are also devoted to the same cause. The same thing that we currently do in many other
take it.
That aren't ANCAP or free
Take
market. It's
Tobruk.
not about buying it. It's about specifically establishing multiple groups of people to check one another groups. This is a systemic, organized thing. It's not just random. Like, this is the thing that annoys me. Is the uncharitability. But the FDA is a wing of the U.S. government, and also it has a very specific function. It's not like I'm not saying I'm like an anti-FDA. It's just only one potential solution, and it has its drawbacks. And
what
also,
other org can we trust to check
wait, there's tons.
quality?
Wait a minute, Vaush. Half of medicine is built off of professional organizations. Professional organizations which are not government run, which are what? No, they're not free market. These are non-profit organizations of professionals who come together with the explicit purpose of making medicine better.
You know what non-profits
have
done to Africa? I don't trust non-profits.
Oh my God. Okay, that's such a stupid argument.
I don't
trust.
That's a stupid
argument.
The reason I trust.
Come on.
No,
come
it's
on.
really not.
Vaush.
You cite professional organizations all the time in your content. The APA is a professional organization.
I don't cite
You're being anti-intellectual right now.
I don't
Vaush.
cite professional organizations supervising the chemical purity of manufactured drugs, because that's not what they do.
And yet they do. They
don't. The FDA.
Yes, they do. Engineering organizations, they are the ones that make the decisions and standards, and they pass those to governments who pass the laws. And I recognize that I have problems. I have problems with. No, it isn't.
No,
it isn't.
What?
Fundamental advocacy of the actual position. If you're not married to blowing me up about a tweet, which you can be if you want to be, that's fine.
Engineering orgs don't enforce anything. They set guidelines. Also, when
that's not true.
When engineers,
you're not correct about that. Go look up engineering orgs and international engineering orgs, which are non-profits, non-governmental profits, non-governmental, non-profit organizations, technical institutions. They're the ones that come together. They'll have a council and they'll say, this is the standard. And then this standard will be picked up by other governments because all of the best engineers in the world came together.
What system do you go through if there is a reprimand? What system do you go through if something has gone wrong?
I mean, if you want me to make something up on the spot, I don't know.
You don't have to. It's the federal court system. If there are expectations and goals and regulations held that are not met, you can absolutely
that's one path.
Who do you sue? What do you do if people die from unregulated medication that was looked over by a non-profit?
Probably a whole lot of options. There's a fuckload of options for what you could do there, Vaush.
So you realize that, like, right now in the United States, because we live in a civilized society, you know that mesothelioma, like, ad run that went for a long time? If pharmaceutical companies, or really anybody, does something that harms the public good, even if just a few people die from it, there's a mass
then you get a TV ad and you can call about it.
A mass recall, there are class action lawsuits that people chomp at the bit. What do you do if it's just like the Walter White meth ban, except it produces painkillers?
Nice. I don't know, but that's for you to figure out in the fantasy that you've written up about my tweet. Like, I don't, that's your problem. That's not a me problem.
You're talking about unregulated chemical labs.
I'm talking about people learning the things. I'm talking about people practicing. I'm talking about people seeking alternative
through chemical labs that are unregulated.
Yeah.
Practicing is what I just said.
Responsibly. Wait, people do this all the time.
Responsibly?
Yes, responsibly. Yeah, people do this.
Okay, they'll do it responsibly.
Study chemistry. Yes, do it responsibly. Obviously, that's
people
how
don't.
everything.
Wait, people who study chemistry.
Responsibly, like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, this is where you've dodged back to, like, why do we need regulations, bro? People just do things responsibly.
And, like, you're gonna try and be like, oh, people shouldn't be able to do things on their own. Like, it's
you're comparing.
You are a lethal weapon, man.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I need to check this for a second. You're comparing gun ownership to the distribution and production of unregulated pharmaceutical medications. The equivalent would be me setting up a home blacksmith where I produce bullets where without regulation there's a 1 in 10 chance that they explode when dropped on the ground, and then I start
Vaush,
selling them to people in my neighborhood.
Listen, I know you're new to gun ownership, but just so you know, fuckloads of people all over the country already legally produce their own bullets at home.
They don't explode 1 in 10 times when dropped.
Yes,
on the
they
ground,
do.
though.
Actually, they explode all the time. People hurt themselves all the time making
1
their
in
own
10.
stuff. And
Demon
it's
Mama, stop.
Incredibly common.
Your
Demon Mama.
hyperbole
What I'm
does
trying
not
to say
serve
here-
your point here.
It's not hyperbole. It's not hyperbolizing.
And by the way, selling to other people.
Wait. I'm sorry. Vaush. You are pulling
I don't think
things
you can
out of
sell
your
their
ass
bullets.
and bombarding me with these very, very strange and pointed questions, specifically
What
to
strange and
avoid.
pointed questions?
Excuse me. Let me finish.
Can you wait?
Specifically-
What strange and pointed question, Demon Mama?
Yes, asking me what in an alternate world that I'm not even advocating for, in a world in which
What?
the only
What's the
medication
question,
you can get
Demon
is
Mama?
hold on a second. The
Hold on.
question that you asked is
What?
what is somebody and I'm putting in the preamble here specifically because this is what was implied in the question that you asked. This was the question that you asked me, which is what are you supposed to do if somebody does something bad in a world that doesn't exist, in which apparently the only thing that exists is
so that is a strange
some
question.
people meth cooking?
So
That's what you asked
wait,
me just a
so
few seconds
okay, hold
ago.
on.
You
I know
specifically
you
asked me that.
No, what I asked was, and I don't think this is a very strange question. How do you find legal recourse if you or someone that you love dies or is injured because they've consumed medicine which was produced from an unregulated, unlicensed pharmaceutical laboratory? That seems to
And
me,
my answer was?
since you're advocating for unlicensed, unregulated pharmaceutical laboratories, to be a pretty straightforward question. It seems like a fairly logical, like, okay, so there's no FDA regulation. What do you do if people get hurt? People get hurt with FDA-regulated medication.
Yes,
They're going
they
to
do.
get hurt far more with unregulated medication.
Okay. And do you remember what I answered you? Because I already answered
You
that
didn't
question.
give an answer. Actually, you made fun of
did
me
give
for
an answer.
asking it.
Nope, I actually did give an answer.
What was the
but
answer?
I recognize you haven't been listening. The answer that I said is there are a number of paths you could take. You could take a path that if we're talking about a world in which there's still a
Brilliant
federal
answer.
government, you could sue them through the federal government. If
How?
we're
Wait,
talking
hold on.
about hold on, wait.
Wait, they're
you want to
unlicensed.
answer? You got to let me answer if you want an answer, Vaush.
Wait, they're
If you want
unlike.
me to
Wait, hold
answer
on.
again, or you, when you didn't listen to my answer before, then I can repeat it again, and I'll do it right now. Which is, if we're talking about a world in which there's a federal government still, you could still sue. Are we talking about a world in which there's
How?
local governments? You could probably sue through the local government. Are we talking about a world in which there are worker councils? Well, then you probably bring it up to your worker council, and your worker council will bring it over to the worker council of the chemists league or whatever. And there's the thing. There's like literally so
Demon
many
Mama,
possible paths.
They're
I don't know-
unregulated. They don't have a business license. What do you talk about? The RV that parks on 3rd and Chester
Wait,
Street?
when do we talk about, like, what are we talking about?
They're not.
business
They're
licenses here?
unregulated. They don't have a firm institution to sue. Like, it'd be like suing your dealer for giving you laced weed.
And once again, I'm just going to go back to the fact that, like, right now we are in a world that I don't even know the parameters of the world that you want me to talk about.
If they're
you want me to answer
if they're
questions about.
unlicensed, then it would make they're not registered as a business, right? Because then they would be breaking the law. I assume they're breaking the law anyway. But like, they don't. There's not a legal entity to sue.
Wait. So okay, sorry. Let me just be clear about the question that's being asked here. So, the hypothetical that you've drawn up here is, in a world in which you live, in a rural area where you don't have access to medicine, and you decide to band together with a couple of your chemist friends and craft a medication yourself that is you determine to be easier to source by making
Break
it
them.
yourself,
Yes,
and
break
you believe
them.
You can do this with
Cool.
reasonable quality, and then you take this medication and it makes you sick. Is that what you're asking me? Is it what you would do in that situation? Or are you saying if there was a world in which the only way to get any medicine was from a band of 10 people Well, obviously, that's not a world I even advocated for,
No.
first of all. And secondly, I don't think that's like, I don't know what you're asking me. What is the question that you're actually asking me? You need to actually establish the
I feel
hypothetical
okay.
if you want me to
Thank you
respond to
for
it.
taking 3 minutes to indicate that you haven't been listening to what I've been saying.
Oh my
okay?
God. Okay.
So
I'm,
in an
I don't wanna have this
underserved
conversation
area,
anymore. This is so fucking stupid.
I
Like, 'cause
agree, but
I
not
feel
for the
like
reasons you feel. Like it seems
obviously,
it
like-
seems to me like
Obviously.
you're like almost
Of course,
Hassan, like, in
obviously.
your inability to
Oh,
take an L
1941.
on something.
Are you for real right now?
I'm
Are
being
you se-
perfectly
do you-
Really?
you-
In both
Okay,
cases,
Seriously?
I feel like there's
Okay,
no way
Vaush,
to
Vaush,
explain
Vaush,
to you
Vaush,
that your
Vaush.
position is untenable. You just
Vaush.
it's the victim peddling and the double and triple and
Okay.
quadruple and pentuple and sextuple and septuple down. But like I don't even
Totally.
know, and to the point now where it feels like you're gaslighting
haven't
me, like
taken
you're ignoring
risks
elements of the convo that have
I'm
happened earlier.
gaslighting you, Vosh. This is insane.
Really?
Like this
Seriously?
is insane.
What?
You think
Wait,
you
I'm
think-
gaslighting you?
wait,
You're insane.
think-
All right.
Wait, wait. No, I said. First of all, I literally said this is insane, not you're insane. So
Am I
again,
the part of
I mean,
this that's insane?
Are
or
you the
part
gaslighter?
of
Are
this
you the
that's insane?
gaslighter now? You changed that word there, Vosh. Are you the gaslighter? I don't know. This is silly. If you want to talk about this another time when you're less heated, or like I don't know, when you
think
want to
you
be a
might
little
be
more
projecting
charitable.
a little bit there?
No, honestly. I mean, I don't know. We just disagree. We just
Demonmama.
disagree really strongly. Vosh, I know that you want to
Vaush.
have like the final word and go, wow, this was really insane. You're a Hassan.
No, I'm
you're
literally.
gaslighting
I'm
me.
just. You
You're
still
a
haven't
victim.
answered.
I answered all of your questions. Your many, many, many questions,
Wow.
most of which had to
Okay.
do with things I wasn't even talking about. I'm just
Do you
Done.
acknowledge
I don't
that
wanna
illicit
talk
drug
about it.
production, not pharmaceutical drugs, but like
Mm-hmm.
fun drugs, whatever, in the United States have generally had a great many problems pertaining to these drugs being.
It's interesting, actually. I just realized this build is actually not that bad. I've been doing a fair bit of fighting, and it's only 1941. Usually, when I do my other builds, I'm like finally ready to go after the United States has joined and is like invading mainland Europe. But here, I'm actually like participating in Africa. I have a fully fueled military with almost 1,000 tanks. Actually, more than 1,000 tanks, but almost 1,000 tanks of each variant. I have like 1,200 tanks total. Anyways,
Laced or of low
absolutely
quality. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So my
they do. They're very. They're. This is it's a huge conversation, but yes,
okay.
of course I agree with that.
So as we all know, you can sue a dealer for selling you laced drugs, but it's not really a thing that happens because
Right. The dealers are pursued by the cops instead. Like they're pursued as for doing the dealing in the first place.
Also, you normally don't know your dealer's name if they're like depending on like what you're getting through or like how well you know this person. Usually there's funnily a supply chain involved where the source of the distribution of the bad drugs isn't really known to you and not really directly addressable because that's
Right.
how criminal enterprise tends to work. And
Okay.
the problem with this is that even if you're hurt by a laced drug, even if you sue, that doesn't stop production. Production continues. The only thing that stopped these generally are drug busts and people getting arrested, and hopefully the ones that get arrested are the ones who are peddling really bad shit and not the honest to God, hard-working, college students trying to finance their debt with weed sales, So with
Okay.
all that being said, it seems like we have a historical analogy to what happens when you have unregulated drug production, and we're making stuff far more complicated, by the way, than the kind of drugs that you do
Yes,
for
you
fun,
are.
right?
You are making things more complicated right now because I'm not. Okay, first of all, the drug trade is a specific profit-seeking enterprise.
Do
The
you
drug
think an
trade.
absence of profits will make inherently people act in better faith when it comes
Yes.
to the...
You believe this too? You
No,
literally
wait.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm
Vosh,
not an
you literally
idealist.
Talk about this in every single conversation that you have about worker co-ops, for example. You specifically bring up that you believe removing the profit motive, the profit incentives, will change people's behavior.
Wait, the profit motive isn't...
yes.
Worker co-ops still have the profit motive. It will change people's behavior because
Need
it leads to
trains to
different
send me to have
internal
my
incentives,
fucking
but I don't think that
convoys blown
getting
up.
rid of
I
the
think that's
profit
the
motive...
case here as
Wait,
well.
wait,
We
wait,
saw-
wait,
wait,
governments
no, it's my turn.
decommodify stuff and get rid of the... Wait, no, governments decommodify stuff and get rid of the profit motive all the time, and they still produce shit products pretty often. Decommodification does not... And also, how do you know... Wait, hold on. How do you know that they're not going to have a profit incentive in the production of these materials. Buying lab equipment and precursors is expensive. You think they're not going to try to make money off of this?
Do you think it was a morally bad action for gay people during the AIDS crisis to purchase and or produce unregulated AIDS medication?
No.
Do you think that was a bad thing?
No.
Okay, then we are in agreement. And what you've been
No.
doing...
They were given a death sentence. They were given a death sentence, and their
many other people.
No, they were given a death sentence, and their president. No, hold on. Stop.
The original question. No. I don't want to stop. You've been projecting a fantasy understanding of what my arguments are this entire time, and you refuse.
They were given experimental medication, knowing it could kill them because they knew they were going to die anyway. Demonmama, please. Demonmama, if the only DIY production we're talking about is you are literally going to die, no federal avenue has been made available. There wasn't even a non-DIY medicine for them. The government was instructed to not do anything. We're talking about broader medication production. The AIDS thing was specific because there was no non-experimental medication. The government was specifically not looking into it. For those men who took those meds, it was death or maybe death. And under those circumstances...
None of this changes a single thing about what I said.
Yes, it does, because that's an incredibly specific niche case.
This entire conversation is you woke up grumpy, you have locked onto one tweet out of a literal like
I've tried
10
to
that I
engage
made,
with everything that you've said here.
No, that's interesting. You've tried and you failed to engage, because this is really interesting. Every single question that I've tried to answer here, which you have asked a lot, I have answered, and then immediately after you accuse me of gaslighting you because
that is absolutely not the case. I said that once, and it's because you're doing it right now, by the way. So what you're doing right now is still gaslighting, because I have explicitly engaged with every single point that you've made.
Please, I don't want to gaslight you.
Dan,
so
you're free to hang up if you want to run, okay? I need
it's not a
you
matter
to
of
understand.
running. I'm getting tired of this.
Then
like,
then go to sleep, okay? This is not comparable to the AIDS crisis. We've been talking this entire time about the production of medication that has a federally produced alternative.
You never even tried to engage with what I was talking about.
I asked you which specific medications, and you didn't give me an answer except for bathtub estrogen.
Oh my fucking god! I literally gave you specific answers. The first thing I talked about, and this is why I'm getting so annoyed. You will be able to watch this. You are going to go and watch this VOD back, and you're going to see where I literally immediately answered.
You're not going to watch this VOD back.
What?
You're not going to watch this VOD back. It would not be in your interest to do so. I don't need to. I'm going to publish it. People in my community are going to agree with me. I'm disgusted by your behavior here. I don't care, Demonmama. I don't care, Demonmama. I don't listen, Demon. I don't care if you're incorrect. Lord knows I have been wrong before. Okay, the attitude you take when disagreed with is repugnant and abusive.
You want to talk about taking an attitude when you are disagreed with.
I am.
I'm so sorry.
The attitude you take when people disagree with you is
of
insanely bad. Yeah.
Okay. I spare me. Please.
I have tried my best to engage with what you've said, but like Hassan, I legitimately for you to talk of condescension, Demonmama.
Yes.
Legitimately, like Hassan. I genuinely don't know how one could disagree with you.
I'm Hassan now. Okay.
How can I disagree with you?
Have a great day.
How could you see, Demon?
She's unhinged.
Do you genuinely believe? I mean, I don't know.
The answer to whatever you're about to ask is probably at this point, yes. I don't know what I could have done in this conversation to have better expressed my opinions or attempted to unearth yours. But you seem offended by the act of attempting to understand or challenge what you say.
I think that is a very uncharitable interpretation of this conversation. I just genuinely think that that's a really uncharitable interpretation of this conversation. I think you've asked a lot of questions. I think you started this whole conversation like pretty pissed off about the topic, and you had already written a thread referring to my tweet about it in which you grossly mischaracterized my viewpoint on it.
I stand by everything that I said.
I think that's great for you. I'm glad you stand by that. But I feel like you getting up in arms about me being supposedly too condescending after you accused me of gaslighting you because of something I don't even remember what you were referring to. And if I said
maybe it never happened at all.
Maybe it never happened at all. Maybe that's true. But I think that my response to it was like, why are you accusing me of gaslighting? I don't know what you're referring to. If I misspoke, I misspoke. That was my response. And you called that gaslighting. I think that maybe you know, we can end this conversation by
Vaush just endlessly getting
by
gaslit. It's
disagreeing
honestly
on,
very sad.
The
that,
problem
or
isn't
agreeing
the
to disagree.
disagreement.
You just went on a tirade about how I'm Hassan because I apparently can't take.
My
I
issue
can't
with
take
Hassan isn't
Vaush,
that he's
Vaush,
wrong.
Vaush,
Everyone
you
but
just
me
called
is
Hassan
wrong.
You just called me Hassan like 3 times and said that I'm incapable of taking disagreement when like our entire history has been us, you know, going back and forth on agreement. I'm sorry if this was too disrespectful or whatever.
It's not
or if you
about
didn't
the
like my
disrespect.
tone or
It's that-
whatever it was.
No, it's not about the
It just seems really
Demonmama.
weird that
It's
you would.
not
It seems
about
really weird that you would
disagreeing.
fixate. It seems
It's
weird
not
that you
about
would fixate on this one
disrespect.
tweet, and then when
It's
I
about-
answer
it's
your
not
questions,
about
you would accuse
fixating
me
on
of
the
gaslighting
tweet.
and call me Hassan.
It's
It's
not
very
about
weird
Hassan.
fixation,
It's not
Vaush.
about Hassanabi.
And I think.
It is not.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I just.
you were going to continue. Okay, no, go. Add
Yeah,
to your
I
stream.
was talking and you started talking.
I know you were
Yeah, that's how it
talking. It's
goes,
been
yeah.
emblematic of the entire conversation. I feel like
Oh,
I've
yeah,
had to
same.
struggle to
Wow,
get every
weird.
word in.
A conversation, 2 people talking. All right, Vaush, have a
No.
nice day.
Is that what she read from what I said?
You just.
Oh, I thought you'd already left, so that's why I said she instead of
No, I didn't.
you. Okay, that would have been good timing, but I'm fine to continue. I'm not tired and I'm not in a bad mood.
Okay.
It's not about disagreeing. It's about the way in which you've engaged with disagreement. On Twitter,
Okay, what way
because
did I do wrong?
I've read through the responses on Twitter, and there's a whole lot of you not clarifying and a whole lot of you being the victim. So, like,
Really?
there are... Yes.
Really?
As you've done in this conversation about 24 times, you know, you're very quick to remind me and everyone how bad faith you're being treated in. And listen,
No,
as
I-
someone
I
who gets
disagree with
treated in
this
bad
part- this-
faith please,
Oh my god.
as somebody who gets treated with bad faith pretty often, I very much get the desire to rebel against that perception. But in a lot of these cases, like, these people are legit just disagreeing with you, and you're just rebuking the disagreement with sass. And then you've come on here, and I swear to God, about a third of you
I'm sorry.
talking has been clarifying your point, and 2/3 of it has been complaining about me not in good faith interpreting what you've said. But I feel
Okay.
like I'm engaging pretty directly with the shit you're saying. I still
I
don't
feel like
know.
I was engaging pretty directly with yours. I just feel like you're asking a
Oh,
lot of
look at
questions
that.
that are based off of the reaction that other people have had to me, as opposed to what I actually said.
I
And
just
it's funny.
don't
Wait,
know.
hold on. No. You just had your little
2 to
bit
1.
where you got to present your interpretation of events, which
This is what I mean,
which is
it's like
based
the
off of you.
1/3 to 2/3.
Excuse me. What do you mean?
It's the
are you talking about?
grandstanding,
I can't
DM.
respond.
It's the grandstanding.
You just grandstanded.
That's not what
You literally-
grandstanding is. If you
All right,
think grandstanding is just
okay,
when you
okay,
talk, then
all
no
right, dude.
wonder you think that we've both done it in equal measure. That happened this time? No,
No,
God!
I lo-
You're spooking me. You can't go quiet like that after saying, you know, I'm gonna
I don't
leave.
know
I'm
how
gonna
to
leave.
respond to you. I
I don't
feel
have the
like,
Discord window open. I keep thinking, oh, now I can
just-
have the.
You say things that are just blatantly false. Like, I don't know. Yes, did if you go to that tweet and like there's a response to Cherry, who's my friend and producer, in which I'm like, damn, this tweet got blown up, which was like 10 hours after I made the initial tweet. My
You're
first
still doing
response. Excuse me. Let me finish. My first response to that, to the tweet. Was me to make a thread clarifying my views. I even made a joke about it. I even made a joke. Wow, people are getting really fucking mad about this tweet. A thing you do all the time.
Clarify for me, please. How could
I
we
just-
expect any of these DIY pharmaceutical labs to produce material of any greater quality than the DIY drug production, which has run rampant in this country for decades?
Okay. If the question is how can we ensure that DIY medicine production is safer, that is one question. And if you want to, like, how can we make it safer than illicit drugs? Well, there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, the profit incentive, removing the profit incentive is a huge point.
How do you know they're going to remove the profit incentive?
Okay, do you want me to answer the question? Or
Well,
do
I
you
just
want to
because you
answer the question?
presuppose that, but I don't know why they wouldn't charge because they have to spend hundreds of thousands on lab equipment.
I mean, this
so-
is. Are you asking like for my advocacy, or are you just interested in pelting me with further questions that interrupt?
So
the
we're
previous
presupposing, and this is fine if you want to. But
Oh,
we're
boy, here we go.
presupposing.
Look at this. I'm just murking him.
Holy shit! You asked me a question, Demon.
You asked me a question, interrupted me with a question, and now you're asking another question.
We're clarifying, but now you've asked me a question. We're 3 layers deep. We're about to unwind. Are you presupposing then that you're only advocating for these orgs to produce pharmaceutical goods if they're nonprofits. Specifically, that if they are for-profit, DIY, you know, even nonprofits do try to make money, right? Like they have to pay their own costs.
Did you want me to answer the question first? I know you're going off on something else, but do you want me to answer that question? Because I can answer
Something
it.
else. Fine.
You
yes.
were. You just went off on another thing. Okay. You asked me. I want to answer this question. So, do I think removing, specifically aiming to create organizations that are not driven by the profit motive will be good and also is the ideal? Yes. I'm a communist. Wow. I actually think that removing the profit motive and specifically making
Oh, look at all these
organizations
tanks I have.
whose goal is not to make money, but instead to sustainably
5 a
meet
day
a need,
of each
yes,
tank?
I think that is a great thing. I
Crazy.
think that is a very good thing, and I think that does change the
I might
calculation.
even be able to make.
I
because
think
one of
that's
the
good
problems-
too, but how does that make the
I
complex
wanna make,
pharmaceuticals they
a
produce of
marine
sufficient
division?
quality?
Okay, the second part.
Do I want
It
to make
now,
a
when we're
mountaineer
talking
division?
about complex pharmaceuticals,
Maybe.
there are
Do I
varying
wanna
degrees.
just
It is possible that there
add
are
it
some medicines that may
to this?
only be able to be produced by a very complicated, very specialized chain. If that is true, then those drugs, then we should prioritize making that chain as equal as possible. If it is truly possible that there are certain drugs that cannot be produced outside of a hyper bureaucratic pathway, then we should be very careful and use the bureaucracy well in that
Just make a
particular.
division
Just
that does
talking
everything.
about
But I think-
like non-regulated drugs, whatever drugs you think
Defense
can be
lowered, HP
produced
lowered, organization
without
recovery
being
rate supply.
subject to
I don't know,
FDA
I think it's just a
regulation,
bonus.
where they'd have to produce it and then have batches sent for quality tests and all that.
Yep.
Like whatever would not go through that, how could you ensure they were of sufficient quality? Because if they're going through FDA regulation, then we're not really talking about DIY anything. We're just talking about like a startup lab.
No, I think there are I think there are many ways to do this. One of the ways to do this is, for example, if you're asking for my immediate prescription, one of the ways to do this is to have other.
Okay, I kinda
I'll
wanna
just
do
go
this.
full into the hypothetical. We have our anarchist DIY chemistry lab that's aiming to produce a needed medicine for their community.
'Cause I don't really want to make
that they
a
can't
whole
get
new
access
division.
to. Then I would say it would be the responsibility and very good and also intelligent and strategic of other people to set up labs that are specifically designed to check the work of other people. We do this already. This is there is a systematized version of this in peer review, but you can do smaller scale versions of this that do the same thing. An independent group, a separate group of people who go and check those medications, who go, hey, wait a second, this shit is not good. There's a reason for
Look at
this.
that.
Either we can improve it because it's a mistake, either we need to get you equipment, etc. Cooperation is how you do this. Cooperation is how you do this. And yes, specialization.
Okay, but
And
how
I
do
just
you
don't think
how do you do that? Because keep in mind, we're talking like DIY bathtub pharmaceuticals, right? Like what
Well, no,
non-profit
I
is going
mean-
to work with them on this?
I
you
mean,
know?
I think that characterizing it as non-regulated bathtub pharmaceuticals is like a bit of an
Well, I am
uncharitable
talking
framing.
non-regulated.
Yeah, but unregulated doesn't mean that you're fucking moonshining, dude. Like
It-
I just feel like that's really
Kind
really
of does. You
no,
know,
it doesn't.
it-
It doesn't. You
well,
just
we
said
don't
that
have
you didn't- you
FDA
wouldn't denounce- Wait. But you just said you wouldn't denounce the people who made AIDS medication in a pinch. That's not. Do you think they were bathtubing it? Like,
Because
I mean, I think that,
I
you
do think they
could
were
say it that way,
bathtubing
but-
it. Yeah, and not
sure, but I
literally,
mean,
but
don't you feel like that's
allegorically.
what's
And
said?
the reason the AIDS thing is exceptional is because there was literally no alternative. We do have alternatives right now.
There was alternatives, but
Not
there was alternatives.
like those.
You
the
could go
systems,
immigrate to another country. You could go to another country. Many people did it that way. I'm just saying there
I
are
don't
always
think this is.
alternatives.
Wait. First of all, AIDS medication was not the alternative we're talking about here. It's not like there was some solution or cure or remedy that was produced at the time. Everything was highly experimental, and
Yeah, I
it
agree.
was right. So
There are
this
lots
isn't
of situations where
comparable
this
to
is the
people
case right
having
now.
like the flu or having like a herpes outbreak or something and wanting medication for that. Like we have systems right now where as close to perfect of a medicine that we know of can be produced to assist them, and
Sure.
we're usually not talking like comparable death sentences. Just to clarify,
Yeah, but
because
I don't know
I
what-
don't
I don't know what
advocate I don't advocate for people to do self-surgery either, because historically that don't work.
I don't either.
But if you're gonna die in like
Definitely
30
doesn't work at
minutes,
all.
unless you get the bullet out of you and you're hours away from civilization, fucking go for it, right? Last resort,
Yeah.
sure. But that's not what
Look.
we're talking about with this DIY pharmacy stuff. We're talking about
Well, you
trying to
are.
serve a
Like,
community.
You kind of are. Like I was what I was talking about, which I've tried to explain, and I feel like you keep framing it as as from the beginning, which is one of the things that agitated me, is you kept framing it as me being a victim when I was trying to explain my rationale in the way that I responded in the offhanded comment, and also my rationale in making a follow-up tweet thread, and also my rationale in coming on here to try and talk about it further.
I just want to know about how to quality control these laboratories.
Sure, yeah, I think
so
there
you
are a
say
lot of
we'll
ways.
have like another non-profit who will look over them. Well, how do we not know that they're buddies and they do it together? And if you're a consumer,
well, I mean, okay, wait, hold on. Let me answer that. Like, before you go on to something else, let me answer that. We already have that problem. And Vaush, you talk about this problem on your channel. You already know that even within the FDA, even within our current regulatory standards, there's fuckload of corporate buddying that goes on.
But do you think those are comparable?
Wait, yes. In fact,
no,
I think,
wait. You think just two people vouching
you
for
asked
each
me a
other is
question.
the same
Wait,
as?
you asked me a question. You asked me a question. It's not just vouching for each other. It's not Vaush. Wait. You asked me a question. Let me answer.
Wait.
It's not just people vouching for each other. It's people showing their work. In fact, this is a foundational aspect of other industries that have worked to be more to liberate themselves
How does
from
a
the nature.
consumer validate that?
I mean, there's a number of ways to do that.
The chemical purity of a drug?
Oh well, I mean, consumers can have limited options right now in how they do that. They have to trust.
They have FDA regulation. That's how they trust it.
That's not always true, because FDA. Okay, I think that's a hand wave. Saying they have FDA regulation is a hand wave. Of how the actual mechanics of that. You're asking me for mechanics, but then when I tell you that the process that the FDA does is actually more complicated than you're making it, than you're saying,
No,
that's a hand wave.
No, it's
Because
not a
I'm
hand
being
wave. It's that
expected to
you are talking about things outside of the existing system of FDA regulation.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
the existing system of FDA regulation is, to give credit where it's due, an unparalleled masterpiece in ensuring chemical purity of the drugs that are prescribed. Is it perfect? No. Is there corporate buddying? Yes. But given historical parallels we have to this kind of stuff, this is basically the apex, or comparable stuff in other developed countries.
I think you might be being. I think the hyperbole doesn't necessarily suit the.
It's not.
topic
Wait.
here,
It's not.
for
Wait.
sure.
What system for ensuring chemical purity in pharmaceuticals exists that is better than the state-regulated drug enforcement? Like what?
Do you want the honest truth? Right now, private industry. All the FDA rests entirely on private industry right now. Like all of the FDA's technology, they outsource to third-party private industry labs. So it's actually not the FDA that has
the FDA applies the regulations and the standards for.
But those regulations. Okay, and there's a great example of this. I'm gonna just borrow real quick just a little news story from COVID that illustrates exactly what I'm talking about and why the problem that you're bringing up with mine already exists in the system that you're in. During COVID, there was an issue with I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was ventilation machines that were being produced by a government contractor. Now, this government contractor said that they were producing the right type of ventilation machine, and then they didn't. And what happened is it took all the way until those machines were already being shipped to hospitals, and therefore people then didn't have the machine that they actually needed, for the FDA to realize that this corporation had been lying about the process. The FDA had trusted, they had vouched for this organization, which then fucked up. So this is a problem that exists in any organization.
Okay,
it is
but
possible for
what they
people
had
to
done
lie.
wouldn't have even been a fuck up if the FDA didn't exist. Even if it's possible to slip stuff by the FDA, having an overarching regulatory body is the system by which you get the internal processes in these companies to remain true.
But that doesn't answer. That doesn't address anything that I said.
Wait, it does, yeah, because they're a federal authority.
You're saying that the problem wouldn't have existed if the world didn't exist? Yeah, that's true. If the
What?
USA didn't exist, we wouldn't have had a COVID
What?
response.
No, the FDA.
What?
Maybe I misunderstood.
What?
The FDA fixes, or at least attempts to fix, these problems. It does do a lot of independent testing. It doesn't vet out these private labs, but even when they slip one by the FDA, the existence of a central regulatory body allows for a strong political and legal framework to ensure the continued purity of these drugs. It also means that there's a strong paper trail with documentation. If a company does fuck up, if pharmaceutical requirements are not met, or there are adverse effects down the line, you don't just have a beef against the company. You can sue them for hundreds of millions of dollars. They can be ruined. People can be arrested. None of this applies.
Same thing would apply. Absolutely would apply to any sort of non-state anarcho federation or anything. The exact same things that you're saying that could happen there would be able to happen here with a few minor modifications to how they unfold. The reputation of an organization. In fact, a great example of this, I can give you a perfect example of this that any person here in the chat who doesn't believe me or whatever, go look at how highly complex open source projects of basically any variety operate. Documentation is encouraged. Projects that do not document.
You
Hold on, wait,
can't
let me finish.
trust people with this, DM.
Hold
It's
on.
pharmacies.
Stop. You're flying off the handle. Give me a minute here. Secondly, there are literally right now in medicine, and I know this because I used to work in a hospital. I used to work in IT in a hospital. I used to do this shit. Right now,
You did not give
fuckloads of
medicine.
open source programs
Hold on.
that are used in life-saving procedures and life-saving processes right now, and that is because it is if you build a if you follow the correct, if you build a correct structure, if you build a structure well, that structure can accomplish things. And one of the ways you do that is by saying, okay, we don't trust organizations that don't, in this alternate future that we're talking about here, we don't trust organizations that don't do their documentation. If an organization is shown to have fudged or be a dishonest source, then all the other people can say, we denounce this person, here's the reasons why, we publish our findings.
Arguments, Demonmama.
These are not ANCAP
These
arguments.
are verbatim. I've argued with ANCAPs, Demonmama. You are literally saying that, oh, they'll publish their information publicly. And no, it is directly an ANCAP argument. You're saying that we don't need regulation because with the free exchange of information, we can trust the reputation.
I literally never said that.
You
asked how regulation
literally
works.
never
No,
said
Okay, sorry,
stop.
federal
Stop,
regulation.
please.
No, Demonmama, please.
Please,
We're
it's so
talking about an
annoying.
absence
It's so
of
fucking annoying. You
FDA.
keep
I agree, it's
projecting.
incredibly annoying. Wait, you are literally like, do you listen to yourself? We don't need federal regulation
I do
because
listen to myself,
the
yes.
reputation of these institutions will allow for people to make good decisions about whether or not to work with them in the future. These are verbatim ANCAP arguments.
That is not verbatim.
Have you argued with ANCAP?
Yes, I have.
Then you're either forgetting or lying to me.
This is very low supply. What the
Okay.
fuck are you
Well,
talking
I disagree with you on that.
I know, because you're not even listening to
You
yourself.
can declare that if you want to. I am.
You
like,
would
Vaush,
recognize this if someone else was
again,
saying this. You're
please,
so
just-
lacking in
wait,
self-awareness.
Okay, I'm sorry. For the last like 30 minutes, we had a back and forth, and then you started getting frustrated, and then you didn't let me finish my answer, and now you're going off on how I'm identical to an ANCAP. Like, I don't get it. I don't get
I know
your
you
approach
don't. You're
here.
locked
I
in a
don't- I
prison
don't-
of your own perceptive capabilities.
Sure, yeah, bro. Yeah.
You need to look outside of the box, Demonmama. Okay?
Yes,
These
correct.
are libertarian
Correct.
arguments. They're not good.
Okay.
They're bad.
Sure, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I disagree with you. I disagree with your character. I disagree with your characterization of my arguments. I think that I have been very, very willing to answer your questions, and that after a couple of seconds of me talking about my issues with the FDA and
If you think
how
you've only ever gotten a
how you-
couple of seconds of uninterrupted convo in this conversation,
that's not what I was
that would
saying. But
explain
if that's
why
what
you've
you want, if
interrupted
that's
me
what
so
your
many
takeaway
times.
is, if that's what your takeaway is, that's okay. That's not what I was trying to say. It was just
It just-
generally referring to going.
It seems like every time you say something that's indefensible, when I say like, whoa, what do you mean by
What?
this? You accuse me of being essentially like
give me an
uncharitable for
example of that?
interpreting
Give me
right
an
now with the
example. Can you give me
ANCAP
an
stuff.
example?
You just made ANCAP
What?
arguments. The arguments you
What?
made were as ANCAP as Putin's
What?
blood and soil arguments were fascist. There's no room
Okay.
for
What?
analogizing or
Okay.
argument on this.
Again,
What?
this is just. I think this is just really uncharitable schizo.
I literally just said when you don't like how I characterize your arguments, you'll say I'm uncharitable and crazy, and then you just did it. You're not even self-aware enough to realize when you're like walking into rakes and letting them hit you on the forehead over and over.
I asked you for an example.
There's one
of-
rake in a field that's an acre wide, and you keep walking onto it, DM. I don't know why. Like,
I don't think you're correct. I asked you which of my arguments. I think you just. I don't know. Maybe we're just talking past each other.
We're not. I'm trying to talk to you.
You
You're-
said your arguments. Your response to the arguments is this.
I just gave the example. You're not even listening now. I just gave the example of you doing this with the ANCAP like thing, but now it's a meta argument. You can't actually address what I say, so it's about the offense and the meta discourse always. Well, I don't think you're listening to me on this, or I think you're lying, or you're crazy, or whatever. But it's like pulling
So
teeth,
you
and I
think
only have
my
so many
arguments-
teeth, DM.
Let me just address this then. Let's take a step back and let me address that one. You think that my argument in which I say that there are ways to build systems of mutual verification, documentation, and inter-regulation. You think that that argument is the same as ANCAPs, who believe that voting with your dollar is how you determine the good or badness of a organization.
The
I don't-
anarcho-capitalist argument
I think
for
that is so uncharitable as to be like almost a conversation stop.
the anarcho-capitalist
Your
argument for how.
understanding-
Oh my God. The
Wait, I was
anarcho-capitalist
talking.
argument for making sure corporations would still have high quality of food and drug production would be that corporations that do bad things would get sued, and that their poor reputation would incentivize other corporations to do better. We have an example of this from the Gilded Age of America. And the truth of the matter is, considering these corporations controlled advertisement, and
Hey,
also
so
most
dude,
people
I
don't
totally
have
forgot
perfect
about that. So I
information,
wasn't
and
research.
also there's a lot of collaboration between them and other institutions adjacent to them, they failed. There was no effective regulation from themselves. And I don't trust an organization anymore if it's a
What?
nonprofit than I do if it's a profit. It's still a power center. And even nonprofits make money, right? Like, just because they're nonprofits doesn't mean they don't charge for their services. Those lab equipment bills have to be paid somewhere. And there's going to be an incentive structure. Hey, you want to pay off these lab equipment bills that are racking up a hole in your wallet? We better sell as many drugs as possible. Who cares if we get them out a little faster? And who's to know from the consumer side which RV they're getting their painkillers from? Are these being labeled? Are these being like properly tracked? With the FDA, there's a supply line through every pharmacy that can be analyzed very cleanly. But with this, well, who knows which batches come to which places from which areas, who was on point that day, who was responsible for this. This is an incredibly
that, like, okay, so first
complicated
of all,
industry. It's not like open source software. You can't JavaScript your way through a person's liver. Like, we need very strict.
Okay. Vaush, I just don't. I feel like you're going off on a lot of different things, none of which I will be able or allowed to fully explain my opinions on. I get it if you think that, like, the proposition of a non-FDA way of regulating and or more further liberating medicine is not possible. That's fine. But the idea that I
just
even
not through
made
this
an
DIY
argument,
production.
I think is uncharitable. And also, I have never once advocated that DIY production should be the only path forward. I just think it's one of many. I've said that like numerous times in this conversation and online, but it just doesn't seem to be sticking. So I don't know if the goal. I don't know what the goal is at this point. I don't know what you're trying to reach or what you're trying to find out or what you're trying to prove or
Oh my
whatever
God.
at this point. Like
This is
I
exactly
just,
what
Oh
I mean.
my
This
God,
was
they
2
just
minutes
started
to
doing it.
not
Okay.
engage with the conversation. This is still grandstanding, DM. Nothing
What?
here elucidated an argument that you
wait.
had
So
or
what
questioned
can I say
mine.
that is?
What?
Wait, I'm telling you
Wait, what?
openly
What?
my thoughts about where we're at in this conversation. Is that like? I don't know. Like that's grandstanding to you?
What?
Presently, in the context in which it's being done, absolutely, yeah. Because
Okay.
nothing that
Okay.
I have been very direct
Okay.
and clear and incisive in all
okay.
the points that I've made in this conversation.
What?
We're not wandering around in circles because we're both talking past each other. You're just failing to address points that I'm making and then
I
sort of
strongly
loftily
disagree.
dismissing
Yeah,
the
this is really
invalidity
boring,
of the
honestly.
argument as a
I
whole.
strongly
want to just-
disagree with your characterization of that, and I think the VOD will speak. for
Is
itself,
gaslighting.
but okay.
Vaush.
All right, well. If you take any medication in the near future, just make sure it's properly sourced, okay?
Yeah, I do. Do a
What?
pretty good job with that.
It's pretty
nice
easy
one. Good
nowadays
one.
because the medication we get is all
Yeah,
regulated.
have you
federally.
ever looked into the sourcing of your medication, Vaush?
I mean, I can see where the
Do you know where
supply
yours
chain-
comes from? You've been talking about that a lot. You know where yours comes from?
I mean, I see that it's produced and filled by a licensed pharmacy that has a legal department that I could sue if something goes wrong. That's pretty nice.
Have you tried?
It's
Ever
not.
tried to do any of those things?
No, because I've never actually taken medication that gave me an adverse effect.
I mean, that you know of, yeah.
I mean, I suppose that some of my
I just-
positive characteristics could be down to an unanticipated lithium reaction, but
Yeah, possible.
yeah. It is nice to know, though, that if anything goes wrong, I know I could pull through thousands of pages of documentation on who's responsible on every level, and that I wouldn't just be gesturing at the judge going like, it was Jeff. he parks at 3rd Avenue, and
Oh, sorry, I don't know what you're talking about at this point. All right. Well, it was a good conversation.
What? She's
hope
so-
you have a good day. I don't think
she's
there's
so
anything else to really address
Fucking
here.
ass blasted.
well,
dude.
Bye. Have a good day.
What a conversation, guys. What a waste of fucking everyone's time on that one. Jesus. I've never seen someone so fired out of a cannon, as the great David Packman would say. Shot out of a cannon. Okay, so no more boat stuff, because boats are bad.
I'm doing okay. I have a bit of a sore
We're ready.
throat. Other than that, I'm fine.
No worries.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm taking my day off because I.
What is this? I don't care. This though. You don't need it. You don't need it.
do you think we could listen to the Haas and Hinkle versus Dylan Burns and Destiny debate while you play? It's really funny. Please do it. The debate is hilarious. Okay, is the debate hilarious in any kind of novel or engaging way? Or is it hilarious because Haas just blows out his microphone the entire time while Destiny finds funny words to call him? I've seen that
Yes.
that debate so many times. This is why I find those people boring. There's like nothing. There's nothing. Yeah, apparently Hinkle backtalked Haas at some point. That's what I heard, which is funny given how much of a worm. Debate is only for the first 2 hours. Okay, you know what? Fine, sure.
All you
could do is threaten for deplatforming. So censorship and deplatforming is all you have. But when I actually told you to come through, put your money where your mouth is, and do something, you don't do shit because you're a pussy. I tell you to put your money where your mouth is, 1 feet away from you, and you don't do shit because you're a pussy. You're not gonna do shit. I disrespect you.
This is great.
You want to talk about scheduling something months in advance or some shit? Like I give a. I'm right there, Dylan. You don't do shit. You're a Karen. You're a tattletale.
This is great.
You're not a man. You're not a man. You're a Karen and a tattletale.
So there was
Because they already.
One more. Fuck.
This is fantastic.
Please, Jesus Christ. So the reason why a lot of people, including like Crimean Tartars and others, boycotted.
They already declared independence.
The reason why.
This is good. You're gonna learn a lesson today, chat.
The reason why
They had already. They had already declared independence before.
James, I can't do it, man.
Hey everybody, today we're debating the war in
That's too fucking good,
right
dude.
now. With Infrared and Jackson's opening statement, thanks so much gentlemen for being with us. The floor, all yours.
Okay, so when it comes to the
Okay, chat.
formation of, this is the first context I want to establish. When it comes to the formation of military alliances, this actually extends beyond the bounds of the sovereignty within a state's own territory. Countries
Okay,
have
we
an
gotta pay
obligation
attention.
to be cognizant of the geopolitical, geographic, and historical and civilizational realities that their own sovereignty is situated within.
Okay,
And this is
1, 2,
specifically
3, 4,
recognized
5,
by
6, 7,
organizations like the OSCE, according to which Ukraine being a member, one country, according to its founding
3,
document at least, one country's security cannot be strengthened at the expense of the security of another state.
5,
So what the
6,
OSCE establishes is that it's not just that
No
states
stagger?
are just completely,
No stagger.
totally
No
free to just do whatever they want in terms of making security alliances and in terms of how they construct their militaries and position themselves geopolitically. There's a very delicate balance of power and security within Europe, and everyone who's committed to actually preserving long-term.
Wait, what was this person in chat? What? Lorange22. Sorry, Vaush, as right-wingers go, I'm pretty moderate/liberal. I'm pro-LGBTQ rights, but I support the Don't Say Gay bill because it's really just saying convos about gender/sexuality are unnecessary at the primary school ages. What do you have, like, do you want to, like, rape a child? I don't understand. What's wrong with sex education at primary school ages?
Yeah,
It's like a normal thing.
That's what I always
don't
tell
get it.
my friend. Like, I have a buddy that's just constantly, they're trying to teach. It's like, what's wrong with like normal human anatomy at school? Like, I don't.
What's wrong with mentioning it? Like, what's the harm? Oh shit! Sorting algorithms. Thank you for the 20 gifted tier 1 subs. No
There's
more
so little
white names.
supply.
Get 'em
Stop.
out. Okay, we gotta actually pay attention to this game. We're gonna die over and over. White names back in.
Oh, but I'm going to be making more. How many do I get from this?
Oh, killed the dog.
Oh, I get 3. Oh.
Oh no.
That's an interesting.
Oh no.
See.
Oh. Oh. What? Oh, wait. I didn't realize there was so much shit in this castle that I hadn't explored. I'm gonna get behind you. 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 I wanna get behind you. Backstab. Damn it. Easy. Easy clap. So we're not watching the shouting match? I didn't know. Wow. I don't know why I thought that killed me. Okay. I didn't know if that person would respond, the person in chat. Feeling feisty. Getting angry. Okay.
Term peace, which is what the OSCE is actually about.
Oh, I can just do this.
Recognize
Wait.
the fact that there needs to be a balance of security. There needs to be a security architecture that ensures that there is a fair distribution of security across the continent. When this balance is tipped in one direction or the other, it creates a situation of instability and geopolitical uncertainty, and leads to the conditions that ultimately could lead to war and to conflict. So one has to keep this in mind when one is bringing up the issue of the sovereignty of states. States should have a right to self-determination.
Deliver the supplies here. I have a fucking train that goes across the whole goddamn fucking.
They should also be cognizant of the geopolitical and geographic realities within which they reside, so as to not create circumstances that upset the balance of security and the security.
Okay, I have to say, why am in Destiny's community? Why am I the person who got a rat for misusing big words to sound smart when Haas is a person who exists? This motherfucker, like the pretense of intellectual engagement falls off so quickly the moment he gets even a little bit angry. Whoa. Whoa. Kingsford, thank you so much for the tier 4 sub. Thank you. You're now a premium member of the Vaush experience. I really appreciate the kindness. Big words make head hurt.
Okay.
Well, in his case, it's big words and big
weird war to be waging right now there, Russia. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, so the next point that I think is really important is to actually, and I would like to hear Dylan and Destiny respond to this when they talk, is to address when did this conflict begin, or if, you know, war, when did this war begin? The war began, and they refused to call it a war. The Ukrainian government refused to call it a war for 8 years because they wanted to have IMF loans, and you can't give IMF loans to a country that's at war. But the war began after the 2014
you know what? It's just getting so much XP.
that took place on the heels of the Maidan protests, which began, in all honesty, without U.S. backing. I mean, there was a plurality of people within Ukraine
oh my God, he
frustrated over the fact that you know, there was not going to be EU membership for Ukraine, and well, I guess there was going to be a delay in the decision.
Cut them off, cut them off,
and
cut them
those
off,
protests began, and then eventually they decided that they were not going to take the unfair, you know, deal that the EU offered them. They knew that these neoliberal policies that would be inflicted upon them, upon
I'm running out of manpower.
EU deal would hurt them much more than opening up trade partnerships more with Russia would have helped them. So, upon these protests, the U.S., you know, began to infiltrate the movement. U.S. politicians began, you know, working with agencies on the ground, U.S. front agencies on the ground, like the National Endowment for Democracy. Victoria Nuland even boasted about the fact that, you know, they funneled I think it was $5 billion. We'll discuss the details of the U.S. involvement in the
I don't know why it doesn't just drop
later
those
on in the
supplies
debate,
off here,
I'm sure.
Fine.
But lots of money came in to these U.S. agencies on the ground to actually hijack the Maidan protests. Upon hijacking the Maidan protests, violence broke out. This was dissimilar to the 2004 color revolution that the U.S. also played a part in, surrounding the 2004 elections, which Yanukovych was also involved in. Initially reported that he won, though international Western-aligned agencies claimed that these elections were marred with corruption and discrepancies and irregularities in the vote. The election was overturned then, and Yanukovych didn't see the presidency until his second run. But
but I don't hand those out.
After being elected, during these Maidan protests, U.S. became involved. They led a coup upon the democratically elected government of Yanukovych, and after that, coup on the democratically elected government of Yanukovych, we saw the 8-year war begin, and that's the next point I want to make.
No, I don't want
hints.
hints.
It's insane to assume that this war began, within the past 2 weeks. Everyone knows that there was shelling, there was fighting in the Donbass region. The question is, when did that begin? It began directly after the coup, thanks to the Western-aligned leader that was put into power. Now, these Western-aligned leaders that were put into power have deep ties to the, nationalist, far-right, factions, radical factions within both the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian political apparatus. There's over 80 far-right, military militias and battalions within Ukraine. Some of the most notable include, of course, the Azov Battalion, which is one of the primary forces that has been waging asymmetrical warfare upon the people of Donetsk and Luhansk.
Yeah, it does sound like a shitty 9th grade presentation. That's true.
Recognize their independence, which was not, granted by Russia or Ukraine or Western states.
Here it comes.
For many years. Though Vladimir Putin did come out and say that he respected the legality, the outcome of the elections, but he didn't actually recognize them as independent states at the time.
You will break it.
Up until this month. So, all in all, this conflict didn't begin this week. It began during the Maidan coup. Asymmetrical warfare was waged against the people of Donetsk and Luhansk. In the past 3 years of the conflict, which is all I have been able to find data for, maybe Dylan or Destiny can provide more evidence, but according to the United Nations, 81.4% of the civilian casualties in the Donbass war came on the side of the Donbass, civilians dying there. And at the end of the day, Russia, was very, very restrained. They tried to engage in peace deals surrounding the Minsk Accord and bring peace to the region. Like it or not, think it's fair or not, he did do that for 8 years. And in that entire time, everything I just mentioned was taking place, and these Western-aligned leaders that controlled the government for different stretches of time over these over this period have made a continued effort to try and join NATO, which Vladimir Putin has continuously said, and I agree, would be a direct threat to their security.
You got it. Thank you very much for those openings, Infrared and Jackson Hinkle. Want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. And second, before I kick it over to Destiny and Dylan for their opening, if you happen to have a question, feel free to fire it into the old live chat. 100% super chats tonight are going to Worldwide Orphans, and you can also tag me with @ModernDayDebate in the live chat.
No, I should have
submitted a question as well. Thanks so much, Destiny and Dylan, for being with us. The floor is all yours for your openings as well.
So, Putin has been saying, it's been quoted as saying, said multiple times, that the greatest geopolitical catastrophe in the last century has been the collapse of the Soviet Union. I think if we look at the actions of Putin, not just in Ukraine, but in other countries and other states within Russia around the world, I think we can see that Putin's goal is to rebuild some sort of new body that resembles the lost Soviet Union. Whether that's going to be the Union state that includes Belarus, Russia, and perhaps some future Ukraine or not remains to be seen based on how well the Ukrainians can resist Russian aggression. But it seems pretty clear that Putin has a huge drive to rebuild what he sees as one of the...
Okay, Salem, thanks for your first up. I haven't tried any companions yet. I want to, though.
The idea that in terms of individual claims, I guess we'll start going through the history. But I mean, almost everything you said is either half wrong
Oh,
or
no,
just
it's not
completely
funny,
wrong.
Window.
The idea that Europe was offering them an unfair deal, one of the biggest reasons why they required that EU deal was because Russia themselves began to put blockades on certain imports for Ukraine just because they thought the president was looking towards the European Union for a deal. The idea that the Russian deal was better when the European deal would have just allowed them access to the markets, while the Russian deal was literally an exclusive deal that would have forbade them from trading into other markets is hilariously stupid. The idea that this conflict began in 2014 is also just completely wrong. There have been foreign policy experts, I can find papers back since 2010, claiming that Crimea was under threat of invasion from Russia.
Oh
and it
God,
was
wait, I
invaded.
rested.
Russia
Oh no,
has
I
been
shouldn't have done
consistently
that.
working with disinformation campaigns among actual military aid to places like Donbass or Crimea since at least 2010, if not earlier. There's been a long and a rich history of corruption in Ukraine, whether we're talking about people that used to actually be in the Soviet party that became leaders of Ukraine, or we're talking about people that more or less wanted to be Putin stooges later on, like Yanukovych. I guess we'll get into the individual history of any of these particular things, but
how do I summon
I'm gonna go stand over here for a bit and regroup my army here
Russia is
because I've
somehow
run out of
justified
guns,
in their aggression
manpower.
and their taking over of any of the Ukrainian territory.
Not tanks,
whether
though.
that's when they took over Crimea in 2014, whether that's the eastern territories that they've tried to take over now, or the rest of Ukraine that they've tried to.
I think I ran out of guns because of
I would echo
other reasons,
something that Haas said at the very beginning of the debate, that one country's security cannot be increased at the expense of another. That's a hilarious statement coming from somebody trying to defend the neo-imperialism of the wannabe Soviet Union, and I'm curious how you guys will defend this in the conversation coming forward.
Okay, so I guess the best thing to do would be start with, I guess I'll start in 2004, since I know more about like recent Ukrainian history. So the Orange Revolution, which I respect the Ukrainian people for taking power into their own hands to stop an election that was stolen, as was confirmed by the Ukrainian court system in 2004. And you call it a coup, or it was a coup of Viktor Yanukovych. What was failed to mention is that after the Ukrainian courts decided that there was large-scale fraud,
Anna MP, thanks to tier 3 sub. I might turn the debate off, but not yet.
is that there was a revote.
So far, so
after
good.
the revote was done, once international monitors were now involved in the situation, that's when Viktor Yanukovych lost the 2004 election. And so the Orange Revolution, that is usually cited here as a coup, what is not mentioned is, just like in the 2014 coup, there is an election after both of these instances. In 2004, there was a revote, and in 2014, after Viktor Yanukovych was impeached, he then fled the country, and there was another democratic election where somebody was democratically elected. There was also another election in 2019 where Zelensky won with about 73% of the vote. I respect the Ukrainian people in taking the power in their own hands to take back their democracy in both instances. I would also like to talk about, I know both of these people care about sovereignty a lot here. In both instances, both in 2004 and 2014 and before it, the Russian state has meddled in the affairs of Ukraine on multiple occasions, fomenting corruption, directly getting involved in elections, and directly getting involved with Ukrainian politicians and basically sponsoring them on behalf of the state. They have been involved in the affairs of Ukraine, and it's not that surprising that you're going to see protests against politicians like Viktor Yanukovych, and you're going to see the Orange Revolution in 2004 when a foreign state meddles in the internal affairs of another state. So it's strange for me to hear all this concern about America interfering in the internal affairs of the Ukrainian government in 2014 when there was so much of it going on ever since the creation of, ever since Ukraine voted with over 90% of the vote to separate from Russia in the early 1990s. I would also like to cite, since it hasn't been brought up by anyone, that Russia guaranteed in 1994 in the Budapest Memorandum to not invade Ukraine after it gave up its nuclear weapons and to respect the nation's territorial integrity. I would also say the spirit of that was also violated when they meddled in the internal affairs of Ukraine in both 2004, 2014, and many other instances. Besides that, I heard a lot about concern about the far right, but I heard no concern about, for example, the Russian National Unity Movement, which is a Russian neo-Nazi political and militia group that is active under the arm of the Donetsk People's Republic. They are a neo-Nazi militia that has been fighting on behalf of the Donetsk People's Republic for a very long period of time now. And so for me, this claim of denazification, or this at all having to do with denazification, is ridiculous to me. Not only are Nazis fighting on behalf of Russian-backed rebels, but there's also instances of, for example, Belarus, the leader of Belarus, which is involved in the conflict, praising Adolf Hitler, saying Germany reached its peak under Adolf Hitler. And not only that, but also we can talk about the Chechen fighters, for example. In Chechnya, they have put homosexuals in concentration camps. Now, I don't want to talk about the deep history of the gays in Nazi Germany, but if there's anything that is Nazi-esque, I would say putting homosexuals in concentration camp would solidly fall under that category. This doesn't even have to do with polling data when we talk about anti-Semitism between the two countries, or the fact that the Azov Battalion's political party, which is something that's cited on multiple occasions, has not won a single seat in Ukraine's parliament. You can add the right sector as well. The right sector has not run a single seat in Ukraine's parliament either.
Yeah,
now,
move right around here.
Three-finger party,
There
you
we
can
go.
get 1 seat out of 450, but this idea of the Ukrainian Nazi state that's being taken on by the Russians is ridiculous when the Russian government and the republics that Vladimir Putin has recognized is fighting with neo-Nazis. It's simple that the Slavs of Europe obviously have a bad memory with neo-Nazis, and it's really easy to convince your population that the enemy is bad if you call them all Nazis. If in this debate I said, you know, my two opponents here are neo-Nazis, it would justify me being extremely terrible towards both of them, because nobody likes Nazis as long as you're a normal person. We can probably get into specifics of U.S. involvement in 2014 and the labeling of this coup. We can get more into the Budapest Memorandum. I'm hoping to get more into that, but I'll just end my statement there for now.
I would also like to add on amends to Dylan's statement that I would like to congratulate the neo-Nazi country of Ukraine for being the first country outside of Israel to have its 2 highest level political positions held by Jewish people, which is an amazing achievement for a supposed
because the Nazis,
opening statements.
Oh
my goodness! Opening statement.
I mean, they do. Hold on one sec, gentlemen. If they do, there are still 5 minutes left for.
Thank you.
You guys want?
Well, now, if we're gonna play, now we got factoids.
I want to say, okay,
that
it isn't that surprising that these people couldn't respect the rules of debate when the Russians are not respecting the rules of war in multiple cities across Ukraine. Sorry, that's
almost as though they were trying to improve the security of their opening statement by violating the security of ours. Unbelievable.
I hate it. All right, so I'm gonna use the mute button liberally tonight, just because I really seriously want this to be a fruit.
Yeah, anyways, I'm gonna go because I want to watch that hockey game. But in summary, I will be talking about this weekend the Canadian meta build for single player. I don't know, Canadian meta in general maybe, but like this is the build right here. Okay, this is it. Okay, good manpower. I kind of fucked it up. I used too much shit, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, I need more anti-air probably. Need more guns for sure. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Artillery is actually at a good clip. You know, I didn't keep care of my industry all that much, but that's okay. You know, we all have our vices, and that was one of mine. We wait for it to refuel. Anyways, love you, appreciate you. Goodbye, I love you. See you tomorrow.